During his original lifetime, a sickly martial arts scholar begs for one healthy rebirth, since mastering theory without a capable body left his lifelong dream unfinished. Fate pays attention, dropping him into another world before Kandria's towering school, where the Empire's finest school attracts aspiring recruits by the hundreds, and fellow recruits challenge the silver-haired newcomer to display his strength, only for Louis to demonstrate that deceptively frail physiques can hit brutally hard, since this reincarnation ultimately grants him the might he always lacked, letting hard-earned martial theory become precise, battle-winning calculation, and Louis believes his second life will recover everything once denied to him, until a crimson target abruptly ignites within his eye, unleashing an infernal power that seizes control of his new body in a rampage, all while someone identifies the horrifying cause. A hex and a red-haired knight frantically calls Louis back before it consumes him. Awakening on the ground, Louis can't remember what he just did, but the hex coils around him, asking whether fate claims victory twice, as a taunting foe brands him a monster doomed like some fallen hero, and that poisonous certainty hammers directly through Louis's heart. Fate can wait. Louis will not surrender this life, charging through the hex with enough fury to shatter its script. The story comes back to St. Calendar 594. Kandria Arcanist Academy opens its gates, and Louis can scarcely process the magical fortress towering overhead, as Louis Kirill joins an enormous throng chasing the Empire's finest preparation. Before a familiar voice breaks through his amazement, Julian ultimately catches up, with Laciella hurrying anxiously at his back, and his mother checks Louis's identification and meticulously prepared disguise, fearing candidates with his distinctive coloring might be deliberately targeted. Julian insists magic remains the only cure for Louis's dangerous affliction, all while Kandria uniquely permits northern commoners to attempt its entrance assessment, making this school their one realistic route forward, a royal institution ranked among the continent's 10 great academies, where the Empire's strongest Grand Masters personally forge new Arcanists, and many common-born guardians have risen during the last decade, with most of those celebrated warriors graduating from Kandria itself. Julian describes it as the perfect environment for Louis to master magic, but Louis sets his sights higher, becoming a Grand Master, growing formidable enough to reclaim their orphanage from the church, a vow bold enough to leave Laciella speechless, especially when she already holds herself responsible for his incurable rampages. Louis answers that her care is the reason he remains alive, unlike his first life, when crippling asthma made even family treat him as debt. Although confinement never extinguished his obsession with martial arts, and years of research eventually made him an influential martial theorist, until a challenger took credit for his thesis, then falsely accused him of being the thief, sneering that someone physically helpless never deserved recognition anyway. Abandoned even by his parents, the dying scholar still wanted more life, one sound physique, one loving family, and a future genuinely his own. That wish carries him to Manhwa in St. Calendar Year 90, where Laciella defies warnings about an infant bearing ominous hair and eyes, all while his reborn consciousness awakens, bewildered that death somehow missed him, and fearful church voices predict the unusual child will doom their facility. But Laciella sees only an innocent life needing protection, naming her newly adopted child Louis Kirill, thereby granting him the sound physique and family he once begged for. Much later, an aristocratic applicant shoves Laciella aside as worthless common trash, hurling her down, all while Louis and Julian rush forward, and the snob mocks Louis's dream of becoming a Grand Master, a cruel mistake, since fury instantly sharpens Louis's pale eyes, all while the aristocrat keeps boasting that touching commoners might ruin his luck. Louis crouches beside Laciella, scarcely containing murderous anger, but Julian seizes his clenched fist before retaliation starts, ordering Louis to save that fire for the entrance assessment, all while Laciella reminds him he promised not to cause trouble at school, leaving the enraged reincarnator trapped by the oldest technique, parental disappointment. Louis exhales, apologizes, and allows his mother to soothe him, as the sneering aristocrats wander off to collect their candidate numbers. Abruptly, the throng parts for the approaching Lord Kane, exposing Kane Aranka, polished heir to the prestigious Aranka family, all while Louis wordlessly marks the departing bullies for future repayment, then reassures Laciella that he will definitely pass, boldly promising to climb the entire way to Grand Master, all while the identical aristocrats laugh at his plan to learn magic, since Louis plans to become strongest and protect everything he values. A second life with precious people is worth every unthinkable battle. Laciella still worries, since scarcely 30 of 20,000 candidates succeed, but Julian understands stubbornness might be Louis's greatest natural talent, so his family chooses to stand behind him as Louis charges ahead. Within the assessment grounds, Louis notices every challenger looks older, before a floating Arcanist starts Kandria's 160th entrance examination, introducing himself as Headmaster Aronian Smith and today's Chief Supervisor, a Grand Master atop this world's 6 martial Arcanist ranks. Below, only Saint and Sage, but far beyond Master, Fighter, and Apprentice, making Grand Masters the kind of privileged creatures society actually obeys. Aronian shows the first test. Climb stairs guarded by upperclassmen, since the required passes wait somewhere beyond those human obstacles, and only 1,000 entrance-claiming tokens may attempt round 2, with the whole test ending the instant every pass vanishes. Aronian signals the start, and 20,000 hopefuls surge forward, each convinced some glorified staircase will be laughably easy, until the upperclassman stationed above welcomes them with a smile, then engulfs the staircase with enough killing intent to mimic hell, warping every applicant's perception before they can understand the danger, and dropping panicked runners into a sprawling pile of failures. Officials instantly disqualify anyone collapsing below the force, all while survivors identify the source as Sheath, last year's horrifying top scorer, although Louis instantly identifies the invisible armament as killing intent, making surrounding candidates stare when the newcomer stays flawlessly composed. Louis makes it clear that Sheath merely released his aura to intimidate them, knowing anyone weak-willed would buckle before taking another step, and the scattered bodies confirm his judgment brutally accurate. Sheath catches him, approving that at the very least one candidate has backbone, but still insists Candria has talent to spare, and no room for commoners. A classist verdict Louis receives with dangerously quiet focus. Sheath notices that defiance and chooses to crush it personally, expanding his killing intent until the whole staircase seems aflame, all while commonplace candidates choke, beg, and collapse below imagined death. Louis simply walks through the nightmare, expression almost bored, asking whether that flimsy intimidation is genuinely everything Sheath possesses, since his previous preparation involved surviving genuine killers after dark, surrounded by creatures striking from all sides, forcing Louis to read murderous movement through the smallest visual shift, and evade multiple lethal charges converging at once, so counterfeit peril was never going to stop him. Louis explodes up the staircase before Sheath can adjust, slicing directly through the senior's crimson force like empty smoke, resolved to prove to these aristocrats what a dismissed commoner can become, and driving a lightning-fast fist toward the first blocker, whose eyes widen upon sensing what genuine killing intent is like. Louis closes the remaining distance in one ferocious burst, leaving the whole candidate throng frozen by his unthinkable acceleration, all while the upperclassman Proctor can only stare at the incoming retaliation. As Louis's bandaged fist abruptly fills his whole vision, then a spinning follow-through blasts Sheath brutally off his feet. Louis touches down with calm focus, already looking beyond the fallen obstacle, all while Sheath sweats through the humiliation of being overwhelmed so cleanly. Spectators can't believe someone so young struck an upperclassman without magic, but Louis merely declares he is going through, heads directly to the passboard, and leaves Sheath behind, claiming one rune-marked token for the following examination, until the enraged upperclassman decides injured pride deserves another assault, and charges Louis's exposed back behind a savage crimson blow. Hearing the ambush, Louis pivots and lifts one open hand, stopping Sheath's magic-powered smash with raw technique alone, an unthinkable defense that fractures the aristocratic upperclassman's understanding of commoners. Aronian instantly confirms Louis has passed the first examination, then reminds Sheath that Candria judges aristocrats and commoners equally, since creatures hardly care about human titles, forcing an embarrassed apology. With the conflict settled, Aronian personally commends Louis Carril, although his expression darkens when he examines Louis's unusual hair, and that loaded silence makes Louis brace for another concealed problem. Still smiling, Louis asks exactly what the headmaster means. Aronian places a comforting hand on Louis's shoulder, promising a special elixir to conceal his traits if admitted, although Louis postpones suspicion and heads toward round 2, leaving Aronian behind all while Sheath's restrained fist shakes with resentment. The humiliated upperclassman watches Louis leave, fury hardening into obsession, unable to understand why the headmaster intervened for a commoner all while memorizing Louis Carril. Soon, the 1,000 survivors gather within Candria's second practice field, where elite-trained aristocrats dominate and commoners have almost vanished. The identical arrogant pair brushes past Louis, still hungry for trouble, warning that no headmaster will rescue him during the following test, but Louis meets the danger with flat, unimpressed silence. One bully claims Aronian alone prevented Louis's immediate disqualification, so Louis diagnoses the obvious problem, sheer stupidity, instantly twisting the aristocrat's smugness into outraged disbelief. After all, a Grand Master's judgment outweighs 2 spoiled candidates, prompting the larger bully to threaten rendering Louis unconscious, all while Louis answers with the minuscule smile of someone expecting disappointment. The aristocrat ultimately notices that smile and loses what remains of his restraint, launching an enraged punch directly at Louis's head, only for Louis to redirect it with 2 precise fingers, turning the charge into a ferocious crackling reversal. As the stunned attacker understands his body will not move, Louis used Meridian Severance, a spiral point strike, and its force sends both aggressors tumbling across the courtyard, leaving their friends shouting after the thoroughly flattened brothers. The pair smashes hard all while Louis coolly remains standing, and nearby candidates stare at the effortless retaliation. One attacker struggles upright as his companion checks him, but his struck arm hangs numb and scarcely responds. Unsurprisingly, he blames poison and threatens an immediate report, until Louis makes it clear that commonplace martial arts caused everything. He concedes he held back for his mother's sake, but patience has limits, since anyone willing to strike must accept being struck back. Before Louis can continue, someone firmly catches his raised wrist, and Kane reminds him they are still taking an assessment. Another battle would hand the school grounds for disqualification, so Louis brings down his fist without arguing the point. The enraged group protests, but Kane commands them to stay away, coldly invoking his identity until even those aristocrats hesitate, then choose retreat over challenging the Aranka heir. The beaten aristocrats withdraw, carrying their injured pride with them, all while Louis concludes that status never improves human garbage. To him, aristocrats who misuse their status are painfully predictable, but Kane draws near, praises Louis's courage, and recalls his name. More surprisingly, the Aranka heir proposes an alliance, before eager candidates instantly swarm their prestigious young lord. Every noble abruptly advertises a family name and begs selection, since teaming up with the gifted Aranka successor seems like certain victory. Louis watches the commotion with a thoroughly skeptical stare until a vast wave of blue magic engulfs the arena. A proctor materializes above and commends the remaining entrants, announcing that their following challenge will test raw strength. Glowing symbols instantly ignite across every applicant's chest, and Kane identifies the mark as an earth attribute. The magic amplifies their weight, dragging bodies toward the floor, all while an enormous golden formation seals the whole stage. For round 2, everyone must battle below that crushing earth magic, a Grandmaster's spell that leaves trained aristocrats trembling helplessly. Kane alone strolls forward as if gravity forgot him, until another unforeseen scene makes even him stop in surprise. Kane turns and finds Louis moving under the identical force, each measured step cracking into the stage's vertical wall. Louis simply walks upward and reaches the platform first, earning a pleased acknowledgement from the supervising Grandmaster. The throng identifies the commoner who also cleared round 1 first, all while Kane concedes even years of elite preparation scarcely keep him upright. Only candidates still standing may proceed, cutting the field again, and the proctor creates another spell with one raised finger. A complete arsenal materializes beside the surviving entrants, allowing each combatant to select whatever armament suits them. Louis thrusts a hand into the spinning collection without hesitation, cleanly catching swords as they whirl through the air. Others struggle with heavier blades, knowing one wrong step means elimination, until the proctor ultimately proclaims the battle test underway. His first command is simple: release the bound slimes, but nothing appears on the floor, confusing the armed candidates. All while everyone debates what a bound slime even is, Louis senses the real assault and looks overhead, where multiple glowing blue creatures are already plummeting downward. The first slime smashes among them with a wet collision, exposing the deceptively harmless face of a bound slime. Blocking earns 1 point, dodging 2, and defeating 1 earns 5, with only the top 100 advancing to the third test. Louis quietly registers just how savage that cutoff will be, all while the cheerful creatures bounce around like harmless toys. Multiple armed candidates dismiss them as weak, low-level creatures, and one combatant dashes forward, already counting 5 easy points. He swings his oversized sword downward with complete confidence, only for the slime to flatten, harden, and glare back. It ricochets like a blue cannonball, blasting straight upward, wiping every trace of confidence from the attacker's face. The creature smashes into him before he can defend, then ricochets onward and targets another stunned entrant. Every collision launches the slime into a fresh trajectory, leaving combatants scrambling as assaults arrive from unthinkable angles. Worse, new slimes continue falling without pause, turning the battleground into a maze of explosive blue rebounds. Candidates fly everywhere, all while the proctors coolly record scores, reading out identification numbers and embarrassingly small point totals. An assistant notes that Aranka and Durahan heirs joined this year's assessment, and both prodigies rip through slimes at record-setting speed. Still, the officials notice multiple impressive commoners, including Louis, whom Aronian anticipates to reveal something especially fascinating. His assistant hesitates, pointing out one immediate problem. Louis has not moved once, all while assaults streak around him. Other entrants assume the slimes are simply too fast for him, dismissing his earlier success as a commoner's fleeting luck. An enormous slime ultimately descends straight at his head, accelerating into a blue projectile with no visible escape route. Louis remains flawlessly still as it brushes past him, then the missile smashes into an unfortunate combatant at his back. The stunned candidates realize Louis deliberately dodged without stepping, all while the rebounding slime rockets toward its following victim, smashing another combatant airborne before continuing its rampage. Louis tracks every trajectory with cold, disciplined concentration, all while 3 enormous slimes converge from distinct directions. A watching noble smiles broadly, certain this formation can't be dodged, but Louis's heightened senses drag up an old lesson, returning him to a savage winter practice field, where helpers once questioned pelting him with perilous rocks. Louis accepted the risk since he wanted to test a theory, so the nervous trio prepared and warned him to dodge. A storm of stones instantly hurtled toward his motionless body, all while Louis recalled a hypothesis formed during his previous life. He had trained information to travel rapidly from perception to movement, hoping instant trajectory calculations could answer any incoming assault. First, his senses collected every moving object's position, then his mind computed their speed, angle, and destination, allowing his body to evade the whole barrage automatically. The stunned helpers erupted with disbelief and excitement, All while Louis ultimately exhaled after proving the method worked. They crowded around, demanding the secret behind his new technique, which Louis proudly named Void Battle Calculation. Its purpose is predicting a battle's outcome before collision, and the present slime convergence becomes its perfect demonstration. Louis's sharpened mind reads every approaching route at once, reducing one charging creature to speed, mass, and direction, then extending those calculations across the whole incoming swarm. 4 lethal trajectories surround him from every side, but bound slimes possess one fatal weakness: they only charge straight. He works out every rebound's speed and angle before it happens, making the supposedly unthinkable barrage almost embarrassingly easy to dodge. 4 clean evasions earn 8 points, so Louis changes tactics, tightening his grip around the sword he has scarcely used. He slips between 2 blue projectiles and launches himself forward, declaring his turn before unleashing a martial sword slash. Kane pauses mid-battle, startled by the commoner's timing, all while proctors confirm Louis flawlessly read the slime's movements. His perception already challenges that of a ranked fighter, convincing Kane that this unusual martial artist would make an excellent teammate. Louis abruptly detects another target entering his range, as a fresh slime rockets toward his unguarded side. 5 more points await, and Louis answers with sword pierce, but another blade reaches the creature at the identical instant. Louis instantly wants to know whether Kane just stole his kill, although Kane claims the stolen targets belong to other candidates. With one elegant sweep, the aristocrat sends a cutting arc outward, splitting 2 incoming slimes neatly through their centers. Their pieces scatter among stunned combatants across the battleground, as Kane cheerfully clarifies exactly whose points he took. Formally introducing himself, Kane proposes stealing points together, and Louis examines the shameless invitation with visible suspicion. Kane only seeks a high rank in a friendly scoring competition, enthusiastically challenging Louis to reveal his full might. Confident in his own skills, Louis accepts the aristocrat's game, and both tighten their grips as new targets approach. The winner may command the loser, adding useful stakes to their contest, all while frustrated candidates watch the pair monopolize the battlefield. Sheath's followers exploit the chaos and prepare to eliminate them, one archer answering the secret order with a vicious smile. Another slime launches skyward directly before the conspirators, giving them cover to knock arrows and begin their ambush. Louis and Kane stand back to back as the creature closes in, and Louis cuts across its route with one efficient swing. At his back, multiple concealed arrows slice through the air, detonating around their target in a burst of ferocious impacts. Kane looks back as something hits Louis from behind, and the lead archer celebrates, convinced the ambush succeeded. Rather of collapsing, Louis responds with a quiet, knowing chuckle, instantly replacing the attacker's triumph with nervous confusion. Louis has caught every arrow between his bare fingers, a reaction speed the conspirators can't begin to understand. Kane checks on him, but Louis dismisses the cheap assault, all while the enraged archers redirect their following volley toward Kane. Their leader channels dark energy into Double Arrow Edge, sending a magically reinforced formation screaming across the battleground. Kane attempts to parry, only for the assault to shatter his guard, and the remaining dark arrow keeps toward his exposed body. Louis intercepts it with his hand, taking a bloody wound, then coolly clarifies that the attackers are actually targeting him. The proctors recognize clear malicious intent and consider disqualification, but Aronian predicts their defeat and commands healing elixirs prepared. Back below, Louis calls Kane's attention to a retaliation, gripping his sword like a bat and asking about baseball. He hits an incoming slime across a meticulously chosen angle, using Void Battle Calculation to redirect its whole momentum. Louis's eyes flare as the improvised swing connects flawlessly, and his blade launches the elastic creature with savage force. The terrified slime stretches into a screaming blue missile, flying straight back toward the archers who started everything. The returning slime smashes through the leader and snaps his bow, hurling him entirely beyond the arena's boundary. Entrant 438 is instantly disqualified after the savage landing, all while Kane concedes the commoner's unusual game is rather entertaining. The remaining archers rage over their fallen companion and prepare revenge, only to discover Louis has vanished from Kane's side. His voice comes from above as another slime follows him downward, and Louis bats that second projectile toward its chosen target. The unfortunate archer receives the enraged slime directly to his face, launching him upside down and out of the contest. Entrant 01439 is disqualified, leaving one attacker frozen in disbelief. Louis appears behind the survivor and quietly names him last, but the cornered noble threatens retaliation from school upperclassmen. Louis answers by casually hooking the man's foot mid-retreat, sending him tumbling over the boundary with a useful lesson in caution. Kane thanks Louis for the earlier rescue and checks his injured hand, all while Louis acknowledges this noble is surprisingly decent. Kane rejects the comparison and invokes the formidable great families, clans whose grandmasters and sages challenge even royal institutions. Louis accepts that distinction, all while they resume hunting slimes together. Their teamwork keeps draining points, infuriating competitors across the battleground, until 3 aristocrats vow to stop the pair from scoring again. Louis and Kane turn together as the challenge reaches them, finding a whole mob charging behind the usual anti-commoner nonsense. Other entrants realize Kane is being targeted and rush to defend him, eager to prove themselves by crushing the supposedly lesser aristocrats. The assessment instantly becomes a free-for-all, forcing both partners back on guard, all while a red-haired polearm wielder finds the growing chaos delightful. She calls Miliana forward, promising to punish every condescending noble, as Louis decides attracting any more attention would become troublesome. He flips through crossing slime routes all while fresh impacts erupt at his back, and Muliana casually sweeps one charging combatant off his feet. Her red-haired partner follows with a golden polearm arc that launches another, drawing the attention of an enormous hammer wielder nearby. The red-haired brute bursts into laughter, ultimately impressed by the exam's direction, since smashing arrogant people sounds far more entertaining than slimes. He rushes into the melee and whips his enormous hammer forward, generating a circular shockwave that sweeps across the battleground, all while he bellows for everyone sensible to clear the route. The spinning assault scatters multiple combatants like disposable practice targets, and the hammer wielder plants his armament after clearing the throng. His delighted victims, at the same time, are left sprawled across the battleground. A proctor asks Aronian whether this chaos should ultimately be stopped, all while another worries that disqualifying every noble could cause political trouble. Aronian steadily insists the school follows its own rules, not public opinion. A towering burst of golden magic then smashes into the battlefield, signaling Aronian's declaration that the second assessment is officially over. He vows to announce the successful entrance and rankings shortly. With the earth magic gone, exhausted combatants instantly collapse. Staff members distribute healing elixirs among every injured candidate, leaving Louis fascinated as the liquid rapidly closes his injured hand. 3 silver coins per bottle sounds outrageous, until Kane cuts off his shock. Kane jokingly promises not to bully Louis even after winning their contest. Before Louis can answer, Aronian magically calls forth the last rankings. Kane enthusiastically asks where his new challenger managed to place, but the visible list stops at 6th, seemingly excluding the commoner entirely. Aronian makes it clear that every top 5 score shattered the Academy's previous record. 5th place belongs to Miliana Royce, the blue-haired staff combatant. Kane Aranka claims 4th, much lower than his confidence predicted. 3rd goes to Faye Durahan, the red-haired polearm wielder. Louis momentarily fears attacking those aristocrats somehow erased his result, until Aronian starts announcing the runner-up position. Louis Kirill takes 2nd with an amazing 887 points. Kane identifies him as that enigmatic commoner, although Louis conceals the details. Accepting defeat, Kane asks Louis to name his promised reward later. Then every finalist waits to hear who scarcely surpassed Louis, as Neil Gunn claims first place with a record 888 points. The enormous hammer wielder smiles broadly, delighted by his interesting fresh rival. Shock spreads since 2 commoners even outscored Faye of the Durahan family. Miliana notices Faye's grip trembling with anticipation instead of anger. As expected, Faye enthusiastically seeks a future match against Neil. In the surrounding area, aristocrats can only seethe over losing to commoners, and one enraged entrant condemns the others as disgraces to nobility. A proctor notes that 2 orphanage commoners taking 1st and 2nd is unprecedented. Aronian wants to know why the Arcanist Association operates orphanages to begin with, since true might has nothing whatsoever to do with social status. He instructs every successful entrant onward to the following venue. Kane questions whether Louis or Neil is stronger, but Louis stays non-committal. A brief title card closes this stage of the competition. The survivors enter the Academy's 3rd practice field for their last assessment. Their last challenge is a survival test called Emblem Battle Royale. Aronian floats above the throne to explain this wonderfully peaceful concept. Each entrant receives an emblem before upperclassmen teleport them throughout the forest. Their goal is collecting as many emblems as possible by any method. Losing one means instant elimination, whereas only the top 10 gain admission. Kane cautions Louis that their high rankings make them obvious targets. Louis recognizes the school published those scores to create exactly this force. Aronian challenges everyone to demonstrate their abilities without restraint, and Louis vows to survive when admission is ultimately within reach. The moment he arrives alone, another entrant steps into his route. An axe wielder claims Louis humiliated the aristocrats and insists on revenge. Louis wordlessly scans Chalchowder and his surroundings, discovering multiple more aristocrats closing in now that Kane is absent. A faint sound alerts Louis to another danger above, where a concealed crossbowman aims directly at the exposed target. Louis grasps that the teleportation staff deliberately leaked his location. The axe wielder ends the chatter with a crushing overhead assault, smashing the ground as Louis slips beyond the glowing arc. 2 spear combatants instantly pursue, determined to block every escape. Louis vaults over their coordinated rush before either armament reaches him. Mid-air, he spots the concealed crossbowman's green projectile approaching, and twists through its crackling route with a desperate aerial turn. Louis touches down safely, but the unknown assault leaves him genuinely puzzled. The axe wielder keeps threatening death and charges without hesitation. Armaments converge from every direction, but Louis threads between their edges. Another green projectile abruptly curves through the crowded battlefield, forcing Louis to confront that unpredictable magic again. He catches the glowing strike against his sword at the last instant, but the long-haired spear combatant assaults before Louis can recover. Louis sidesteps again as wind magic bends another projectile toward him. The frustrated attacker keeps stabbing all while Louis maintains just enough distance. Still, Void Battle calculation can't predict magical trajectories reliably, so Louis abandons prediction and chooses a more aggressive counter strategy. Sen no Sen means attacking before an adversary can complete their strike, turning the enemy's own committed momentum directly against them. Mistaking his pause for fear, the leader commands everyone forward together. Every combatant launches at Louis from a distinct angle, and he ultimately shows a smile since their timing is exactly what he needed. Louis bursts ahead before the surrounding armaments can descend. At the very moment the axe wielder commits to one enormous swing. Louis races below the descending axe instead of retreating, then jams his sword against the weapon's shaft mid-swing. That sudden leverage flips the much larger attacker overhead, redirecting both man and axe into another incoming combatant. Louis catches the following spear shaft, all while chaos erupts at his back, and the concealed mage launches another curving wind projectile. This time Louis positions the spear wielder directly in its route, letting the magical shot strike its caster's own ally instead. He then hurls that stunned combatant aside and claims the spear. Louis balances the stolen armament across one steady hand, using it to knock another incoming projectile off course. The redirected blast tears into the crossbowman's hiding place, all while Louis's sweeping counters send the remaining attackers sprawling. With the ambush shattered, he draws together their surrendered emblems together. Louis claims the whole stack as payment for their terrible plan. One desperate noble commands a last full-strength magical assault, only to discover Kane casually holding the mage's disabled crossbow. Another attacker smashes into a tree as Louis notices his friend. Kane drops the shattered armament and notes its owner can't cast anymore. The beaten aristocrats can't understand how Kane escaped their other allies. He simply forced their stalling team to reveal the ambush beforehand. Their enraged leader still vows to defeat both commoner and heir, until Kane's confiscated crossbow slams him flat from behind. Louis confirms Kane is unharmed, although the aristocrat finds everything annoyingly noisy. Kane dismisses those novice mages and hands Louis their captured emblems. He offers continued help, but Louis demands handling his own problems. Faye steps from the trees, applauding the commoner she already acknowledged. Then she levels her sacred lance and calls for a battle. Kane identifies Faye Durahan as a Grandmaster's daughter. Louis questions whether they are friends, earning Kane's immediate offended denial. Kane acknowledges they fought once and that lowering his guard cost him. Even though Faye already commands apprentice-level magic, Kane suggests ignoring her. She instantly calls that retreat cowardice, trapping them with pure pride. Louis accepts since he seeks to witness a great family's battle firsthand. Delighted, Faye vows to battle without magic for fairness. She instantly rockets forward with Sacred Lance, slam, and the technique's sudden speed snaps Louis fully alert. His sword catches the descending lance, but its force drives him backward. Faye shows a smile when he makes it through her opening assault, all while Louis coolly concedes she is genuinely good. Faye plants the lance and pivots around its reinforced shaft, whipping its branching blade toward Louis from below. He falls back as her follow-up sweep carves a blazing semicircle. Faye springs high and prepares Sacred Lance again, then detonates another slam hard enough to crater the clearing. The distant collision instantly draws multiple observing school upperclassmen. They praise the Durahan spear art's flawless speed and strength. Louis impresses them too, although they expect the commoner to lose swiftly. One upperclassman asks Aronian which combatant he believes will win. Aronian likes Louis, but still proclaims that Faye can't be beaten. Physical battle test both body and will, but something favors her. Back below, Louis watches Faye disappear behind the settling dust. She appears spinning into another Sacred Lance technique, Rush, a relentless charge that surrounds him with blazing thrusts. Louis evades each after image, steadily frustrating her assault. Void Battle calculation ultimately detects a brief opening in the pattern. His focus locks onto Faye's grip and the lance's exact movement, allowing him to cut within her reach all while redirecting the armament upward. Faye braces both hands and forces the contested lance back down, but Louis flips over her following sweeping retaliation. He touches down low all while Faye recovers her armament at his back. She can't believe Louis dodged every rush, something even Kane failed. Louis claims the pattern becomes simple once someone observes meticulously. Faye answers by igniting the lance with a fierce orange aura, driving its point down hard enough to split the earth. She follows from above with Sacred Lance, Crescent Fall. Louis identifies how spear arts combine thrusts, sweeps, defense, and suppression. Their extended reach makes controlling the whole battlefield dangerously easy, but every versatile armament still carries multiple fatal weaknesses. Faye spins her lance into a radiant defensive barrier, as Louis targets the spear's vulnerability at close range. He only needs perfect timing to erase her reach advantage instantly. Swordsmanship. Sword Dance launches him through the surrounding arcs. Faye identifies exactly which weakness Louis plans to exploit, but confidently proclaims his close-range counter will fail against her. She pivots sharply, converting defense into another rotation, and constructs a widening vortex of repeated lance sweeps. Louis understands her technique changed before he could enter safely. Faye brags that the Durahan Sacred Lance has no weaknesses, then drives its blazing storm directly into Louis's route. The observers marvel as Faye combines spear technique and magic beyond normal apprentices. Louis refuses their imagined ending and starts another swordsmanship technique. Swordnet weaves blue defensive arcs throughout Faye's fiery vortex. He understands spear techniques consume enormous stamina, so precise defense buys time. If he keeps blocking accurately, an opening must eventually appear. Fei's relentless rotations ultimately begin losing their earlier sharpness, and void battle calculation locks onto the developing weakness. Louis dives through the storm and launches his counterstrike, but his bruised practice sword snaps against the sacred lance. The shattered blade tumbles uselessly onto the ground. Both combatants pause, equally taken aback by that deeply inconvenient failure. Fei concedes Louis would have countered successfully with an intact armament. Louis agrees, mildly blaming his genuinely terrible luck. She accuses him of holding back, and he concedes observing before committing. Now that he grasps her style, Louis vows to battle seriously. Fei points out the obvious problem. His armament is already shattered. Unfortunately for her, Louis considers his fists even better. Fei resets her stance, presenting no visible opening at all. Louis patiently waits until her concentration shifts for one instant, then shifts the moment her footing starts another rotation. Fei converts that pivot into a blazing spinning charge instead. Louis plants himself and lifts an empty-handed martial stance. Kane cautions that taking this rotation head-on could cause serious injury. Void battle calculation maps the spear's spiral around Louis's waiting hands. He catches the rotating shaft between his palms without touching its edge, then channels its forward momentum away in a twisting blue current. One sharp motion dismantles the supposedly unstoppable charge. Kane and Fei stare, equally stunned by that unthinkable defense. Even the lance's defense piercing point can't break Louis's joined palms. The observers question what technique could neutralize Pierce so entirely. Fei will not stop and brutally tears her armament free. She whips the lance upward all while rotating into another approach. If one point can't penetrate, she chooses to assault from everywhere. Fei launches again, dragging the long armament at her back, and Louis instantly senses the following technique will be distinct. Multiple afterimages spread across the clearing around him, each appearing to deliver a full-powered lance thrust. A whole ring of Feis converges from every direction. Louis only shows a smile at the elaborate attempt to overwhelm him, answering countless spear points with an equally bewildering storm of hands. Each flashing hand meets a distinct section of the incoming sacred lance. He deflects every thrust until red trails shatter around his blue defense. Fei can't understand how her whole barrage keeps disappearing. Aronian understands Louis stops the spear's rotation with a specialized technique. Even he has never seen it, making the commoner's answer genuinely amazing. Louis accelerates the revolving parries and starts forcing Fei backward. He bursts through the barrage with one burst of redirected momentum. Fei plants her lance into the ground to halt her collapsing rotation. She grinds through the earth as frustration ultimately cracks her confidence. She calls for an explanation for Louis's bizarre technique, so he describes it as a martial parry, twisted to cancel her spear's rotation, leaving Fei visibly lost among terms she has never encountered. Instead of lecture her, Louis demonstrates the identical principle through movement. Fei's eyes widen as she understands another assault is already coming. Louis surges forward before that realization can become a defense, splitting into overlapping figures that race around her spear's route. Fei sweeps the sacred lance through every approaching image, but Louis flows between its arcs with unthinkable, fluttering changes of direction. From beyond, even Kane questions whether he is seeing an illusion, since Louis's many evasive routes resemble butterflies circling the lance. Fei sees him directly ahead, but every desperate strike misses, thanks to the legendary boxing footwork known as butterfly step. Its light, irregular rhythm makes Louis almost unthinkable to predict, allowing him to slip within the spear's effective range untouched. Fei answers with a sudden rising assault from point-blank distance, but Louis stops, counters, and blasts her backward again. Kane can scarcely believe his friend just overpowered Fei, all while even the watching officials admit the outcome is unexpected. Very few combatants can defeat her without using any magic, making Louis look like a genuine hand-to-hand battle genius. Fei nevertheless rises and will not shame the Durahan family. Louis steadies his breathing as her battling spirit comes back, knowing someone from a great family won't accept defeat without protest. Fei abandons her armament and assaults behind a spear-shaped aura, exposing barehanded techniques built upon the identical thrusting principles. She crosses her arms, compresses her might, and charges headlong, all while Louis settles into the compact guard of Wing Chun. His Pak Sao deflects her descending arm before its strength touches down, but Fei instantly converts the motion into crushing fist. First, their counters collide, and the resulting shockwave hurls both combatants apart. The power ringing through Louis's wrist feels remarkably like inch strength, earning the Durahan style his genuine respect beyond simple spearwork. Fei repays that compliment with crushing fist. Third, so Louis calls forth everything his old world taught him about boxing. Red and blue barrages collide until the clearing becomes pure collision, and facing such might fills Louis with the joy he always imagined. But that excitement reaches the crimson presence coiled around his heart, sharpening his gaze as something within him calls for even more. Louis welcomes the rising hunger, and a monstrous shadow answers at his back. Fei charges onward, only to sense that the adversary ahead has changed. His force swells into the shape of a roaring crimson creature, freezing Fei so entirely that her body will not obey. Louis closes the distance and drives a savage kick into her guard, launching her upside down before another explosive strike follows. Aronian identifies the sudden shift and instantly grows alert, all while Louis skids back and face smashes across the clearing. She scarcely catches herself, then drops to one knee under the collision. The surrounding candidates stare as the famous noble combatant struggles, enraged that an unknown commoner has managed to corner her. Even Kane reels from the force now leaking across the battlefield. In the surrounding area, Brian abruptly doubles over as that force makes him sick, since the sensation feels terrifyingly familiar despite his confusion. Watching the Crimson Creature tower over Louis confirms his darkest suspicion, all while his companion understands their plan has failed entirely. If the old legend is true, Brian decides Louis can't survive, all while the Berserk Commoner launches himself straight back at Faye. She sees the peril coming and forces her injured frame upright, only for Louis to sweep through her attempted defense. The following strike tears a cry from Faye before she can recover, and sends her tumbling helplessly below his circling crimson trail. Louis dives after her with another savage punch already prepared, rounding the fallen combatant with eruptions of murderous red force. Faye stops frantically, but his speed and might keep climbing, until one colossal spectral fist bears down upon her position. Certain the following blow will kill her, she chooses one last answer, wrapping her fist in fire through martial arcane magic. Her blaze fist meets Louis's descending assault head-on, and crimson force smashes against a roaring golden blast. The blast ultimately hurls Faye away from her relentless adversary, all while its recoil carries her spinning through the shattered clearing. Louis touches down hard in the crater as the remaining force disperses, and the crimson madness ultimately starts draining from his eyes. Staring at his scorched hand, he identifies magic strength firsthand, then assures a anxious Kane that Faye needs help more. Before anyone shifts, the assessment proclaims that Louis's emblem is gone, giving Sheath the perfect excuse to declare him disqualified. Louis looks down and finds the token still burning on his shoulder, until the last blackened fragment crumbles away with the flame. Kane protests that Faye destroyed it by accident during their battle, but Sheath insists the headmaster witnessed a clear rule violation. He steps closer, eager to see the troublesome commoner disappear, only for Faye's bruised voice to stop him mid-gloat. Sheath and Kane turn as someone draws near from behind, all while Louis identifies the combatant he feared had been badly hurt. Faye walks back under her own strength and checks his condition first, prompting Sheath to accuse her of protecting a disqualified adversary. She silences him, fully aware that her magic burned Louis' emblem, then apologizes all while Louis concedes his rampage caused the accident. Faye proclaims him the winner and promises a rematch after enrollment, although Sheath smugly notes she possesses only 4 emblems herself. Faye answers by pulling a folded cloth from within her uniform, offering Louis every emblem she collected as his rightful reward. 14 golden tokens spill into his hands, restoring his recorded score, and Faye argues that defeating her makes the transfer entirely legitimate. She then recruits Kane with a rather blunt nickname and a plan, refusing to let weaker entrants advance all while Louis is excluded. With one kick, Faye flips her sacred lance back into hand, explaining that 10th place must finish below Louis's 14 emblems. Kane shows he reached the identical conclusion and readily joins her, so the pair races away to reshape the remaining rankings. Louis watches them leave with renewed hope as an official arrives, formally disqualifies him, and starts escorting him from the assessment. Sheath cautions the departing commoner that their conflict is not finished, even though his companion notes Faye can still force Louis through. That possibility makes Sheath consider a fatal assessment accident instead, all while the other noble uneasily wishes Louis makes it through the scheme. Brian remains haunted by Louis's aura and questions his true identity. At the same time, Louis accepts that martial arts alone can't match magic, but the school could teach him how to fuse both disciplines. His immediate problem is explaining his ruined clothing back home, since telling La Ciela the truth would unleash endless anxious questions. All while Louis searches for a gentler story, a concealed blade drops at his back, only to stop between his hands before reaching his neck. One sharp reversal tears the armament free and flings its owner away. The startled assassin can't understand how Louis sensed the ambush, until he casually clarifies that fresh blood has a noticeable smell. 2 more killers surround him as their leader promises a quick death, forcing Louis to admit these adversaries require his full attention. The leader concerns him most, judging by the fighter's controlled presence. That man spins through the darkness and assaults from Louis's blind side, driving his sword forward with enough power to finish the job. Void battle calculation triggers before the edge can connect, mapping every thrust and guiding Louis between overlapping blades. He catches the leader's sword with both hands at the last instant, then employs its momentum to slam the assassin into the ground. A second attacker follows with a sweeping kick from behind, but Louis springs away before the spinning combination can trap him. The leader confirms that their intelligence about his perception was accurate, which tells Louis someone deliberately studied him before this ambush. Admitting his battle challenger's an apprentice, the assassins introduce magic-powered crossbows. 3 luminous wind bolts erupt together and spear across the road, making Louis shield himself as their combined force tears past. More enchanted arrows curve around the trees and return from behind, so Louis abandons commonplace movement and starts a controlled breathing technique. Drawing chi through his body, he shoves every muscle beyond its limit, converting concealed physical potential into a burst of speed and strength. Louis rockets toward the crossbow line before another volley can form, all while the shooters fire anyway, convinced resistance is pointless. Their crossing beams converge at his back as he slips through the gap, leaving one assassin staring at empty space in disbelief. Louis vaults over the armament and employs it as a springboard, planting both feet against the leader's raised guard. The collision flips the masked man backward below the moon, as Louis touches down and narrowly evades another pair of wind bolts. Enraged, the leader instructs his last companion to stop the boy, and the red-eyed assassin descends with a vicious overhead kick. Louis meets the assault, but blue force detonates between their legs, sending a painful tremor through his arm before he can counter. He pulls away from the exchange and swiftly restores his stance, now certain this last combatant is distinct from the others. The heavily built assassin floats upright, radiating might without moving, all while the crossbowmen surround Louis and charge another synchronized volley. He weaves through the converging beams with trails of afterimages, but their tightening pattern leaves fewer openings with every shot. One last barrage overpowers him and sends him crashing down, leaving the exhausted shooters relieved that their target ultimately fell. They wonder how any commoner proved harder than an average apprentice, unaware that Louis's calculating eyes have already opened again. He surges up, seizes the nearest crossbow, and closes instantly, smashing its owner aside with a clean palm strike. A follow-up chop drops the masked assassin before he can shout, giving Louis both an armament and cover from the others. He deflects their following volley until wind bolts scatter the remaining shooters, proving his collapse was merely bait for their careless approach. Breathing hard, Louis stands over the fallen leader with crossbow ready, all while the strongest assassin applauds his performance with chilling calm. Louis questions why the man ignores his dead companions, then tests him by firing the captured armament without warning. The assassin slips between the crossing bolts and praises Louis's cleverness, admitting only his employer's order prevents an immediate killing blow, since under distinct circumstances he would make Louis his disciple. An enormous purple hammer smashes against Louis's crossed arms, then lets loose enough force to launch him high above the road. The collision smashes his guard and leaves him coughing mid-flight, but the assassin pursues before Louis can even begin falling. He concedes Louis may surpass an apprentice, but not a higher rank, and proclaims the difference between them far too large to overcome. One downward strike drives Louis from the sky like a nail, followed by the assassin plunging after him with gathering purple strength. The second collision blooms across the road in a ferocious blast, leaving even the attacker taken aback when movement keeps below. Louis lies within a shattered crater, injured but still conscious, forcing chi around his bones as he will not die there. The assassin dismisses that resistance and lifts his last technique, forming an enormous hammer that he claims no one can survive. Louis looks upward and ultimately grasps the scale of the assault, martial arcane, celestial hammer descending toward the whole crater. He recalls the family he plans to protect through mastering magic, and his crimson eye ignites around one absolute desire to change fate. Refusing death at any price, Louis draws together everything into one punch. His crimson fist rises against the falling celestial hammer, and their opposing powers detonate across the forest in blazing light. Louis is thrown flat again, coughing against the fractured stone, all while the assassin examines his trembling hammer with open fascination. For one instant, the boy's strength actually felt equal to his own, explaining why someone influential wanted Louis removed before enrollment. Excitement replaces caution as he lifts the hammer to finish this creature, but a roaring windstorm abruptly tears him away from the crater. Spiraling currents lift the assassin and carry him helplessly upward, surrounding him with countless green fists formed from compressed wind. He can only stare as the unknown spell closes from every direction, then disappears below a vortex of relentless magical hits. The barrage pounds through his defense until his confidence becomes panic, all while gentler currents shield Louis from the chaos nearby. Aronian descends within the fading wind and touches down beside him, ultimately giving Louis a familiar face after the savage ambush. The headmaster praises him for suppressing the rampage and offers an elixir, which Louis drinks, all while Aronian turns toward the surviving attacker. A casual gust smashes the assassin away before he can escape, as Aronian calls for the identity of whoever targeted his examinee. The injured man only cautions that no Grand Master can protect Louis, and Aronian understands the danger concerns far more than this ambush. Calling everything merely the beginning, the assassin triggers something within himself, then bursts apart before a single useful answer can escape. Aronian suspects the assassin guild, although the suicide seems unusually extreme. At his back, Louis marvels as the elixir restores his injured frame, knitting even fractured bones below coils of green healing energy. Once steady, he questions whether Aronian genuinely arrived by coincidence, and why the headmaster keeps appearing whenever his life is threatened. Aronian postpones that explanation until they reach Louis's home, which reminds him how late he has kept his anxious mother waiting. Panic accomplishes what assassins could not, sending Louis sprinting away. Aronian stays behind long enough to summon Kylie for cleanup, and a dark serpentine familiar draws together the wreckage from the road. The story comes back to Menitia, shouting, already surrounds the orphanage's repaired mill, where two church officials accuse Laciella of cheating their milling tax. One seizes her wrist and threatens punishment when she denies wrongdoing, only for Louis's boot to crash across his face in the middle of his threat. He touches down running and sweeps both intruders away from Laciella, who greets her returning son all while the men tumble at her back. Laciella scarcely processes his arrival before noticing his bruised condition, and Louis dashes to confirm that the officials never hurt her. Rather, she touches his bruised face and insists on her own explanation, so he invents an unconvincing story about getting caught in a tree. The recovered official identifies him and resumes threatening the orphanage, all while Louis shields Laciella and prepares to report them himself. Before either side shifts, Aronian descends and steadily describes it as a misunderstanding. He introduces himself as Kandria Academy's headmaster beside the stunned family, making both church officials realize a genuine Grand Master witnessed everything. Aronian sends his regards to their lord with unmistakable magical force, and the trembling pair bow deeply before scrambling to obey. Once they flee, he draws near Laciella and requests a private conversation. She welcomes him within, with Louis following close behind, where the self-turning millstone instantly catches Aronian's attention. A closer look shows similar practical inventions throughout the orphanage, from clever machinery below to elaborate fixtures across the rafters. Louis casually adjusts another device as if none seem remarkable, all while Laciella proudly clarifies that he designed every useful improvement. She fears his assessment caused trouble, but Aronian assures her, if not, since he has seen talent like Louis's only in Gaia scripture. That sacred account starts when creatures held humanity below their rule, until one genius mastered the elements and created martial arcane. With his companions, he defeated the creatures and inspired Liberation Day, earning the concealed title that history recalls as the first hero. Laciella understands the celebrated savior, but not the secret at his back, so Aronian clarifies that common legends deliberately changed his appearance. In truth, the hero possessed unmistakable black hair and black eyes, knowledge now restricted to humanity's highest authorities for a grim reason. Even though he saved the world, madness eventually consumed his mind, driving him to slaughter allies in one unforgivable last rampage. Authorities erased his identity from history and buried the perilous truth, all while his inner madness survived as a feared hereditary hex. Louis examines his hands and connects that to his own rampages, as Aronian shows nations execute anyone born with those traits. He then reveals the silver hair as dye concealing Louis's identity, prompting Laciella to admit she ordered it out of terrified caution. Louis gently calms her, understanding that fear kept him alive, and reasons Aronian would have killed him already if that were his purpose. Impressed, the headmaster says Louis resisted and even mastered the madness, proving he may carry the qualities of humanity's following hero. Aronian cautions that the world's peaceful surface conceals approaching darkness, and watching Louis today made one unlikely answer feel possible. Perhaps legends are absurd accurately since someone must create them, so he offers to guide Louis toward protecting humanity's future. With that grand proposal, Aronian flicks an apple across the room, which Louis catches without blinking despite everything he just learned. The headmaster then shows Faye and Kane secured enough emblems for him, meaning Louis passed and can receive Aronian's personal instruction. Louis accepts the gamble, then wants to know what happens if madness claims victory. An invisible slash instantly carves the apple within his hand. As Aronian vows to kill him the moment control vanishes. By morning, Louis tells Julian about the invitation all while repairing fences, although tuition, uniforms, and dorm fees swiftly temper the celebration. Below those commonplace worries, he questions his link to the first hero, recalling how effortlessly Aronian exposed the secret concealed below hair dye. The execution warning also leaves him uncertain how far trust should extend. Before departing, Louis wants to know why Aronian terrified Laciella with the truth, fiercely rejecting the suggestion that his mother could become a burden. Aronian makes it clear exposure would endanger the whole family, making knowledge necessary, then leaves Louis one command: grow stronger before the true tests begin. Louis accepts that warning and fixes his attention on the school ahead, only for the orphan-aged children to interrupt his resolve by charging over. Lana reaches him first and springs straight into his waiting arms, tearfully asking whether her older brother will ever return home. Louis promises every long break will bring him back, sealing the reassurance with a pinky promise she can enforce. Their farewell pauses when another child proclaims a nobleman's waiting servant, and an immaculate butler draws near from a carriage to confirm Louis's identity. He presents an invitation from the young master of House Aranka, exposing Kane seeks time together before their school term starts. Louis accepts and follows the servant into the waiting carriage, which carries him into the prosperous Kandrian city of Harzan. The butler makes it clear that House Aranka's influence built much of this city, before their enormous estate shows Louis what a great family means. Kane races across the grounds to welcome his new classmate, personally, already delighted by the chaos Louis created during the last assessment. Louis credits Kane and Faye for his admission, dropping their old wager, but Kane maintains that postponed sparring only forms more opportunities now. He also guesses Louis came seeking advanced knowledge about magic in school, before sudden commotion deeper within the manor stops their reunion. A severe noblewoman steps into their route and scrutinizes the unknown guest, forcing Kane to introduce Louis as the friend he invited. His mother silences any explanation with one cold command, and Kane instantly identifies the hostility at her back stare. She condemns him for bringing an outsider through House Aranka's gates, declaring a commoner unworthy of friendship with a future sage. Turning on Louis, she accuses him of seeking wealth or influence, then offers a golden ring valuable enough to fund a whole life. She drops the bribe at his feet and anticipates quiet obedience, ordering him to pick it up and disappear from Kane's world. Kane protests the humiliation, unable to accept his mother's cruelty, then apologizes to Louis, all while the whole hall watches. Louis steadily retrieves the ring, explaining that Kane earned his friendship, before asking whether the young heir's judgment is worth so little. The challenge strips away his mother's composure, and she calls forth guards, who rush down the staircase to throw the commoner beyond. Kane stops their rout and shows Louis surpassed him and Faye, but his mother dismisses that achievement as an unthinkable lie. Louis adds that competing beside him will only make Kane stronger, provoking another enraged accusation that he taunts House Aranka. Before the guards can assault, a crushing force hurls them backward, announcing the return of a broad nobleman wrapped in a crimson cloak. He repeats Louis's claim that competition will strengthen Kane, startling everyone who assumed the family head had heard nothing. Kane identifies his father, Grandmaster William Aranka, instantly, all while the previously fearless noblewoman abruptly struggles to remain composed. She argues Kane can't improve, all while following an unworthy commoner, but William walks straight past her without entertaining the complaint. Kane bows respectfully as his father stops before the two friends, and Louis introduces himself, all while measuring an aura rivaling Aronian's. William wants to know whether Louis genuinely surpasses him, and Kane confirms it, so the Grand Master delivers a brutally simple demand: prove it. Red energy erupts behind William and takes the form of a roaring tiger, flooding the whole hall with killing intent aimed solely at Louis. The spectral creature lunges before Louis can prepare a defense, crushing his lungs below force that feels entirely real. As his legs threaten to buckle, Louis examines the man responsible, finding no softness whatsoever within William's blazing red stare. He recognizes the Grand Master genuinely seeks him to feel death, at the very moment that merciless gaze intensifies and closes around him. The imagined strike punctures straight through Louis's chest and consciousness, almost tearing his soul free through the Grand Master's horrifying will. But Louis forces heat through his body and will not collapse, drawing on hard-earned resistance from years of facing creatures in peril. His own fiery intent spirals outward until it fills the hall, making even William pause as the opposing force abruptly expands. Surprise crosses the Grand Master's face for the first time, since an enormous crimson creature now rises behind the kneeling commoner. Louis's blazing creature smashes headlong into William's spectral tiger, and their incompatible wills split the hall between gold and crimson. Kane cries out as the ferocious collision threatens to swallow Louis, who ultimately drops to one knee when both manifestations disappear. Kane backs his exhausted friend, finding him shaken but conscious, all while William asks exactly why Louis pursues such desperate might. Louis answers without hesitation. He plans to protect his family. That simple conviction earns the smallest approving smile from William, who instructs Kane to strengthen his weak will by learning from Louis. His wife protests the decision after everything she just attempted, but William wants to know whether she genuinely plans to challenge his judgment. Her courage disappears, leaving Kane quietly relieved beside her. With the family dispute settled, Kane leads Louis toward the practice fields, apologizing again for both parents as they cross the quiet battleground. Louis dismisses the insult, although William's test was undeniably extreme, all while Kane clarifies his father respects merit above blood or status. Louis recognizes that savage examination was William's peculiar concern for Kane, and the thought leaves the sheltered air watching birds cross the sky. He quietly questions whether such harsh expectations can genuinely be called love, remembering a childhood spent almost entirely eating, sleeping, and preparation. Every lesson forced him against creatures far beyond commonplace practice, since William intended to raise another sage worthy of their lineage. Kane obeyed without understanding, desperate only for his father's recognition, all while the guarded estate gradually came to resemble a beautiful prison. Endless praise for his status merely tightened the chains around him, making every glimpse beyond the walls feel more precious. He dreams of singing freely like a wandering bard, or crossing the continent with nothing restraining him but the wind. Unfortunately, a world ruled by might offers no freedom to the weak, so every unwanted sword swing still becomes part of his escape. Kane selects a blade, determined to cut through those invisible chains, and enter his father's school as the first step toward independence. What Kane genuinely seeks is permission to choose his own life, and he trusts Louis to help him reach that distant freedom. Louis agrees, raising his hands as their promised spar ultimately starts. From a nearby overlook, William quietly requests his servant's investigation results. The report confirms Louis used unknown techniques throughout the examination, broke existing records, and even defeated Faye after she activated magic. Aronian also protected him from assassins, suggesting unusually serious interest, which makes William label the commoner a potentially valuable troublemaker. His servant questions why such peril should remain near Kane, but William believes overcoming peril is accurately how people grow. Below them, Louis demonstrates that lesson by kicking Kane off balance, convincing William this rivalry may genuinely strengthen his sheltered son. Kane recovers and collects wind around his blade for a decisive technique, all while Louis invites him to assault with everything he has. Watching closely, William acknowledges Kane judged his new friend well, as martial arcane. Wind lunge launches the air across the battleground. Louis reads the straight approach and captures Kane's attacking wrist, twisting through the wind until their positions reverse entirely. He praises magical acceleration but criticizes Kane's overly linear movement, leaving Kane to understand why even Faye failed against him. Louis examines his friend long enough for Kane to grow self-conscious, then questions whether his inherited battling style has always felt wrong. Kane insists those secret arts made both his father and grandfather formidable, but Louis points out that inheritance never eliminates other possible routes. The suggestion of growing differently from his ancestors catches Kane entirely off guard, all while Louis selects two short, curved blades from the armament rack. He offers them as the means to surprise William with something new, unaware that the Grand Master is already observing from behind. William remains silent, curious enough to let the experiment continue, as both friends leap forward and begin testing the altered style. Louis makes it clear that speed itself becomes an absolute martial armament, encompassing reaction time and decisions instead of movement alone. Kane already possesses natural quickness that favors rapid consecutive assaults, and his wind support magic pairs flawlessly with lighter blades. A difficult thrusting tradition suited his grandfather, but constrained everyone after him, so Louis recommends a specialized battle style built around Kane's own talent. He demonstrates the twin blade stance and wants to know whether Kane can endure it. Kane takes both armaments, refusing to be mistaken for a pampered noble, all while Louis starts teaching constant motion and strategic retreat. Together, they decide to show William Kane's ability and determination. They launch their demonstration together, diving directly at the watching Grand Master, as Kane wraps both curved blades in wind and accelerates beside Louis. Their combined momentum becomes a spiraling green current across the practice field, forcing even William to acknowledge that something unusual is taking shape. Kane races past his father with a wind-guided slash, all while Louis crosses at his back and keeps the assault flowing. His rapid dagger work shows why short blades offer unmatched maneuverability, provided their advantages are pushed to the limit with proper technique. Using butterfly step, Louis circles faster than William can comfortably track, and that unexpected footwork ultimately catches the Grandmaster's attention. Aftermages swarm around William as Louis compresses maximum force into every opening, giving Kane time to gather more wind and charge from behind. He turns that current aerial, attacking from every angle alongside Louis, until his body and daggers feel lighter than ever before. For the first time, Kane experiences battle as effortless flight, and instantly loves this fusion of blades, movement, and wind magic. Strength coils around his chosen armament as confidence replaces hesitation, making William tense when the transformed assault closes in. Kane meets his father's startled gaze without shrinking away, declaring through that fearless charge that this is his martial route. William answers that declaration with a quiet, thoroughly unimpressed scoff, before releasing crimson force that blasts both attackers away. He calls abandoning generations of family technique a naive display of will, sending Kane and Louis tumbling across the battleground below his overwhelming aura. Louis instantly instructs Kane to accelerate instead of surrendering their momentum, so Kane drives fresh wind through them both, and changes direction mid-fall. They split apart, then cross toward William from opposite sides, and the Grand Master's dismissive expression hardens into focused silence. Green currents sling the pair around him in a tightening spiral, but William shapes a crimson hand and contemptuously questions whether that is everything. The construct reaches for Kane's blade before his blow can land, but Kane cuts away from its grasp and gets away sideways. William brands the retreat cowardice and charges after his son, unaware Louis already taught Kane that retreat can load the following assault. That pulled-back momentum reconnects instantly, carrying Kane beyond William's counter, all while a sudden wind tornado bends his escape into another approach. Louis rejoins him within the current, keeping both assault lanes synchronized, until William ultimately grits his teeth at their stubborn coordination. The pair dives together for one decisive strike from above, using Louis's change-up strategy to disguise exactly when their real speed arrives. During practice, Louis first demonstrates the trick with a deceptively relaxed swing, abruptly snapping it toward Kane before the aristocrat can read the timing. Kane scarcely catches the blade with both daggers locked together, only for Louis to soften the force and redirect instantly. He makes it clear that changing speed makes these adversary misjudge every assault, turning casual motions into feints and minuscule delays into decisive openings. The story comes back to the demonstration. Those shifting rhythms surround William with confusing green arcs, and the Grand Master turns repeatedly without finding their true approach. Kane ultimately presses forward with a deliberately slow wind-covered slash, which William dismisses as meaningless before leaning aside. That contempt keeps his attention on the blade one instant too long, since Kane accelerates past him and converts the slow arc into a sweeping cut. Louis is already descending from William's blind side when he looks up, and both friends recognize that their meticulously prepared opening has arrived. They strike from opposite directions before William can reset his guard, but the Grand Master halts the exchange just before collision. Both attackers freeze, exhausted and unsure how he judged their attempt, until William turns his full attention toward Kane. The air steadies his breathing below that familiar intimidating stare, and receives only a warning never to disgrace the Aranka name. Kane accepts at once, hearing approval below his father's harsh wording, all while William turns away before his servant can question the decision. Privately, he reviews the daggers, hit-and-run tactics, and shifting speed feints, finding unexpected potential in a style that treats retreat as opportunity. William never imagined children could teach him something genuinely interesting, although Louis merely regrets that his rare Grandmaster spar ended so swiftly. Kane is ecstatic over earning recognition and promises Louis a present, leading him directly into the enormous Aranka family library. Louis can scarcely process the towering shelves and their countless books, as Kane offers a packed box to thank him for finding this route. The unexpected generosity leaves Louis momentarily unable to respond, especially when he finds rare books, scrolls, and a heavy money pouch within. Kane makes it clear the collection covers both school life and uncommon magical knowledge, including basic theory, mana attributes, and the curriculum awaiting new pupils. He also describes the mandatory awakening ritual performed through Gaia's statue, noting even aristocratic families normally pay 10 gold coins at church temples. Louis panics at the price until learning school pupils undergo it free, even though daily expenses and book rentals still demand money or earned credits. Kane hands over the whole box and considers their earlier promise settled, all while Louis decides magical pharmacy may be his best route to income. Then inspiration hits. Knowledge from his previous life can produce something marketable, so he quietly questions whether House Aranka understands any merchant guilds. Louis keeps the actual idea secret, promising Kane will understand eventually, and 1 week later the school entrance ceremony ultimately starts. Wearing his new uniform, Louis steps into the grounds he fought so hard to reach, only to catch an expensive fragrance on a passing upperclassman. He identifies the fashionable cologne and assumes its wearer belongs to nobility, when the identical student introduces herself as Rose from the previous class. Louis accepts her cheerful offer to show him around and gives his name, leaving Rose to wonder whether the unknown Kirill family conceals noble blood. As they walk, she makes it clear the Academy's worsening political tension, caused by imperial heirs clashing with formidable aristocratic families as the Emperor ages. Aronian maintains surface peace, but factions compete viciously for educational resources, and pupils who lose credits or become targets can face expulsion. Louis quietly files away the warning as Rose examines him more closely, reminding him that his record-breaking entrance already attracts perilous attention. She presses nearer and asks which faction his family backs, but another student cuts off after recognizing Louis as the commoner record holder. The newcomer introduces himself as Brian and extends a friendly hand, all while flustered Rose insists she definitely noticed something important about Louis. Embarrassed by the interruption, she storms off and abandons the tour, leaving Louis to return Brian's greeting with cautious politeness. Brian dismisses Rose's behavior and presents himself as an understanding ally, warning that the school mirrors the Empire and treats commoners especially harshly. Before that friendliness develops further, Kane spots Louis and dashes over, prompting Brian to excuse himself and seek other new pupils. Louis watches him leave, uncertain whether the kindness was entirely sincere, all while Brian's smile vanishes the moment his back is turned. Kane wants to know what they discussed and whether Louis already understands him, then shows Brian is the Chancellor's son, although hardly a close friend. He still considers Brian decent enough, despite obvious reservations, before dismissing him as weak-willed at the very moment Faye and Miliana approach. Miliana greets them cheerfully, all while Faye offers recognition only to Might, and Louis thanks her for helping him survive the last examination. Faye rejects the gratitude, promising she will defeat him following time, which instantly sparks another ridiculous argument with the equally competitive Kane. Miliana drags Faye toward registration before the bickering becomes a rematch, and Kane ultimately hands Louis a pouch containing his share of recent profits. Those gold coins come from the merchant company following Louis's instructions, since his secret product is a new perfume with a distinctly subtle scent. Kane originally doubted such gentle fragrance could generate serious money, but its remarkable price now leaves him eager to share some at home. Louis asks him to protect the formula, and Kane gladly agrees, before registration gives Louis the credit card governing his school life. In the surrounding area, gossip instantly targets the commoner and mentions Sheath's sudden expulsion, so Kane clarifies Sheath hired the assassins who attacked Louis. Louis ultimately connects his old challenger to that attempted murder, all while Kane cautions that Sheath's older brother, Jess, remains within the school. Across the courtyard, Jess fixes Louis with a silent, unmistakable glare, deciding revenge will be sweeter if the commoner suffers gradually. That concealed danger follows everyone into the Academy's crowded Grand Hall, where Aronian welcomes pupils who survived the savage entrance process. He calls their admission only the beginning and urges them toward greater strength, then calls forth top-ranked first-year student Neil Gunn to deliver the representative speech. Neil draws near carrying an enormous axe and very little concern for ceremony, overwhelming the hall with an aggressive presence nobody expected from a speech. Even the faculty recognizes too late that inviting him was spectacularly unwise, as Neil commands every student present to listen meticulously. His grand academic ambition is simply beating everyone until they lose control, which earns instant outrage from almost the whole incoming class. Neil roars over their complaints and calls every protester a weakling, all while the faculty member responsible for him wordlessly considers resignation. Then Neil singles out Louis as the main adversary he seeks, leaping from the stage as his colossal axe spins toward the throng. The armament buries itself in the floor directly before Louis, leaving a shattered crater between him and the watching pupils. Without flinching, Louis looks up when Neil calls him by name, as the brute touches down impossibly atop the axe's narrow handle. Perched there, Neil brings down himself until they stand almost eye to eye, then declares that he and Louis will settle everything in battle. Kane steps between them and insists on they respect the ongoing ceremony, but Neil taunts him as another loudmouth hiding beside Louis. The accusation that Kane has no bite hits exactly the wrong nerve, since he is thoroughly tired of arrogant strangers making that assumption. Kane launches an enraged punch before anyone can stop him, only for Louis to catch his wrist inches from the target. He instructs Kane to calm down instead of ruin their first day, all while Neil happily offers to battle both friends at once. Brian cuts off again, urging the Academy's talented commoners to cooperate, and cautions Neil that selfish violence will swiftly get him expelled. Neil responds by dismissing Brian as insignificant and instructs him aside, stunning Louis, all while Kane scarcely conceals his amusement at the humiliation. Noble pupils condemn both commoners for displaying the Chancellor's son such disrespect, but Kane says Brian embarrassed himself by interfering where nobody invited him. Neil ignores the politics and promises Louis will be his first victim, until a teacher reminds him that unsanctioned student fights are prohibited. Matches require classes, tests, or tournaments with a teacher present, and breaking that rule brings immediate expulsion without negotiation. Neil abruptly bursts into laughter off the confrontation. Admitting expulsion would be inconvenient, so he shoulders his axe and sets their battle temporarily on hold. He leaves Louis with a last promise that the challenge is coming, all while Louis wordlessly accepts that this nuisance won't disappear. The exhausted faculty member ultimately ends the ceremony and dismisses everyone, leaving Louis to wonder why Neil targeted him until Faye rejoins them. Kane blames the situation on her, earning a sharp blow to the head, before Faye concedes she actually fought Neil during the last examination. Their match ended as a draw, but rumors later claimed Louis defeated her, making Neil desperate to challenge the supposedly stronger commoner himself. With the explanation settled, the four friends begin leaving the hall, painfully aware that their first appearance already made them widely unpopular. Once it is over, the group visits the school shop for basic dorm supplies, where Louis discovers that every commonplace necessity carries a painful markup. Even a plain feather pillow costs 30 silver coins under the smiling sales pitch, all while an herb-filled meditation pillow somehow reaches 5 whole gold. Kane makes it clear that daily shopping here makes money and credits essential, so Louis unwillingly buys the cheapest starter set for 100 silver. His perfume earnings cover it, allowing the remainder to support the orphanage, but the elixir shelves remind him that preparation will demand far more income. Faye and Miliana leave for their dorm before tomorrow's awakening ritual, and their expensive luggage strengthens Louis's resolve to keep earning. He carries his modest purchases into the school dormitory, searching for room 60, all while hoping his roommate is tolerable. Multiple rolled bedding sets abruptly fly through the open doorway ahead, where Louis finds a group loudly warning someone not to resist them. 4 pupils surround a quiet purple-haired first-year student and demand obedience, but their target answers the intimidation with unsettling, expressionless silence. That refusal infuriates the leader, who curses the student's stubbornness, then seizes the first-year student by the collar and threatens a battle. Louis steps in with one precise finger strike against the aggressor's arm, sending sharp pain through the limb until the bully recoils screaming. Louis steadily reminds them that battling means immediate expulsion, but the leader insists no battle started and denies attacking anyone. He then calls his following punch self-defense and charges anyway, letting Louis redirect the reckless swing with one casual touch. The stolen momentum drives that fist straight into another bully's face, launching the unfortunate student backward, all while everyone freezes in disbelief. Still carrying his bedding, Louis innocently asks whom he supposedly struck, as the fallen bully tearfully calls for why his own leader hit him. Before the bewildered attacker can answer, Louis nudges his leg forward, forcing another accidental collision that drops one accomplice instantly. The remaining bullies stumble around their groaning friends without understanding anything, all while Louis sends another minuscule pulse through the leader's rigid arm. Pain and panic spread together as his body stops obeying him, and one last tap slams a nearby student's foot off balance. That student smashes into the others, collapsing the whole group together, until every bruised bully begins blaming someone else for the disaster. Their leader ultimately points at Louis and calls everything his fault, but Louis shows a smile and blames their strangely uncooperative bodies instead. The terrified student recognizes those subtle touches controlled every movement, and calling Louis a creature instantly wipes the amusement from his face. The sudden menace makes every bully scramble away from his approaching steps, until the quiet first-year student gently catches Louis's arm and stops him. Louis grasps the stranger seeks the matter ended without further punishment, so he offers the bullies a choice between leaving and meeting Aronian. They choose survival, fleeing all while promising revenge from a very safe distance. Once alone, Louis shows they share a room and asks his roommate's name, receiving only a small bow from the painfully reserved student. A label on the bedding ultimately introduces him as Kara Candace, but Kara walks past before Louis can continue their awkward conversation. Left in complete silence, Louis can only watch his roommate disappear, deciding Kara is so withdrawn that bullying practically finds him automatically. He begins arranging their furniture and wishes tomorrow's ritual is calmer, unaware that shadowy figures are already preparing something below the school. Their secret work leaves a suspicious magic circle concealed from every student before morning collects the freshmen within Candria Academy's enormous temple. Louis and Kara enter together below the towering statue at its center, where a priest presents the world's creator as goddess Gaia. He recounts how Gaia once let humans and creatures coexist, until creatures exploited their natural strength and dragons seized the skies, all while colossal behemoths claimed dominion over the land below. Krakens ruled the seas, and their struggle drowned the world in blood, killing countless humans until Gaia ultimately answered with divine anger. She blessed powerless humanity with the 4 elemental essences, creating martial arcane and turning near extinction into human supremacy. The priest promises those identical blessings will awaken within today's pupils, although Louis notices his sermon never mentions the enigmatic first hero. Kara catches the tension in Louis's expression but remains silent before the priest abruptly singles both roommates out from the throng. He leads them toward 2 isolated mats on the temple's far side, explaining that elemental talent should reveal itself once they meditate there. Below his formal instructions, nevertheless, the priest watches Louis with open contempt, and Louis instantly senses that something about this placement feels wrong. The priest privately decides the school has no place for him, then conceals that hostility by calling everyone else to begin. Louis questions why a supposed teacher seems to hate him already, as every student settles before the statue of Gaia. The priest invokes earth, fire, wind, and water around their meditation mats, channeling the temple's glowing formation through the rings on his hand. 4 enormous elemental symbols flare to life across the chamber, and matching fire and water crests ignite below individual pupils. Their converging light races back toward Gaia's towering stone body, awakening the statue's eyes with a sudden golden glare. Divine radiance engulfs the temple as Gaia's image rises above everyone, and the released force almost sweeps the pupils from their mats. Once they steady themselves, countless elemental lights fill the artificial starscape, exposing the distinct powers answering each student's focused mind. Some celebrate fire all while others instantly reconsider plans after receiving water, but Neil erupts within a ferocious spiral of flame and stone. The watching freshmen realize he awakened both fire and earth affinities, and controlling them instantly makes his talent look even more absurd. Neil bursts into laughter as the 2 elements surge enthusiastically around his body, then lets loose enough strength to blast surrounding students off their mats. He instructs both new affinities to obey him with typical restraint, before turning through the smoke to check Louis's distant mat. Neil will not accept a challenger who can't awaken any magic, but the observers soon realize no element draws together around Louis at all. Louis searches the surrounding energy and finds only smothering darkness, momentarily fearing his reincarnated soul can't connect with this world's magic. That explanation feels wrong since he sensed Kane's wind during their spar, whereas now even the faintest trace has entirely vanished. A cloudy force smothers his thoughts and confirms deliberate interference, but Louis will not let another prison break his will. Remembering how he defied his failing body during his original lifetime, he forces his mind outward until blue light rips through the darkness. The mental barrier breaks apart under an explosive surge of determination, sending a radiant pillar through the temple as fragments scatter overhead. Louis ultimately sees 4 distinct colors floating within the ritual space, recognizing them as the elements everyone else can already touch. The priest gazes in disbelief since his concealed isolation circle should hold, all while Louis reaches toward a nearby sphere of blue energy. The element slips away the instant his hand draws near it, which leaves him able to sense magic without forming any connection. Repeated attempts produce the identical infuriating result around his mat, and even Louis starts struggling to explain this second obstruction. The priest quietly celebrates since mental isolation was only one layer, with a confinement circle still blocking Louis's spirit from every element. A magic forbidden orb further weakens that bond, making awakening almost unthinkable, all while the bribed priest blames Louis for attracting determined foes. Having accepted their payment, he instructs Louis to sit and despair, as the ritual keeps until darkness settles over the school. Hours later, departing pupils mock Louis, all while he and Kara keep struggling, with exhaustion gathering as stubbornly as the missing elements refuse to. Kara examines their mats and notices something below Louis's position, then quietly points to the floor and draws his attention downward. His unusually direct warning identifies the concealed mechanism as a trap, and Louis's frustration instantly hardens into cold understanding. He rises over the suspicious marking and drags back one fist, smashing through the stone floor with a single concentrated blow. The collision sends fractured tiles and dust bursting around his feet, exposing a glowing purple orb buried directly below his mat. Kara identifies it as the interfering item and urges Louis to hurry, earning a grateful smile before he comes back to the awakening. Louis questions why such a device was concealed in a school temple, then understands coincidence is the least convincing explanation available. The suspicious priest remains nearby as Kara quietly heads away, but Louis postpones accusations since his real awakening can ultimately begin. Freed from the buried orb, he stands amid the visible elemental lights, and all four colors instantly spiral toward him in widening rings. Their combined vortex shocks everyone who dismissed the two commoners, all while Louis opens himself entirely to the overwhelming current. The priest can't understand how even a master-level trap failed, when a firm hand abruptly touches down on his shoulder from behind. Aronian instructs the trembling conspirator to stand down instantly, and the priest bows before obeying his headmaster without argument. Pupils assume Aronian came since Louis still can't complete his awakening, all while the retreating priest curses an intervention that almost exposed everything. He slips through the quiet temple corridors once the throng looks away, then draws near his waiting accomplice beside an outdoor fountain. The priest reports failure and insists on distance before more trouble finds him, but his employer merely calls Louis lucky and keeps plotting. Aronian secretly tells Kylie to monitor the priest Sid for beyond interference, then comes back after clearing the remaining obstacles around Louis. With nothing left to suppress him, the last result depends entirely on Louis, who meditates within four tightening bands of elemental light. Feeling their presence directly recalls Cain's earlier explanation of magic, which described the elements as the goddess-made foundation of this world. Creatures wield that strength unsurprisingly from birth, unlike humans who require awakening, since elemental energy already lives within every monster's body. Cain explained that their magic crystals store those concentrated affinities, allowing each creature to command its matching element instinctively. Their crystals serve as natural channels for releasing that stored magic, all while awakened humans must borrow and manipulate elements from their surroundings. Compatible elements approach during the ritual, leaving preparation to deepen recognition, although Louis once mistook a creature crystal for an element itself. Cain corrected him by saying everything in this world contains elemental essence, so Louis now questions whether the blue light favors him most. He cautiously extends one finger toward the hovering water element, and its strength answers with visions of magical creatures ruling the sea. A monstrous kraken abruptly appears behind those graceful shapes, flooding Louis's senses with the identical crimson presence tied to his hex. His concealed black hair and red eyes surface as agony rips through him, detonating the elemental vortex into a ferocious four-colored storm. Water, fire, wind, and earth collide around a forming divine emblem, manifesting the world's essence below what the temple calls Gaia's will. Aronian identifies the perilous change reflected within Louis's eyes, and understands the uncontrolled awakening is rapidly becoming catastrophic. Louis fights to remain conscious all while every element batters his body, as Aronian lifts four affinities to create a goddess barrier. He invokes the temple statue and seals the raging strength around Louis, forcing the scattered elements back into separate, contained formations. Four luminous walls closed around Louis and cut off the perilous feedback, even though the trapped strength keeps grinding painfully through his mind. Beyond, pupils struggle to see why Aronian abruptly sealed the commoner away, all while the headmaster commands Louis to ignore everything and regain control. Louis clings to that voice as the crimson impulse fights his reason, gradually forcing the madness back behind his clearing eyes. The ferocious force ultimately recedes, leaving his natural black hair exposed, and Louis concedes he came dangerously close to losing himself again. Once calm, he examines the elements and compares them to elementary particles, reasoning that their behavior might change if he adjusts their frequencies. He guides the colored lights into a stable, rotating structure, then expands their synchronized pattern with increasingly precise control. The compressed formation flares into one blinding sphere above his palm, before separating cleanly into earth, water, fire, and wind symbols. All four affinities spiral around Louis, without tearing at his mind, leaving even Aronian stunned by the unthinkable correction. The controlled vortex grows taller and denser than Neil's earlier eruption, horrifying every student who had dismissed Louis as a failed commoner. Aronian shows a smile since the result exceeds even his enormous expectations, all while Louis understands scientific principles may let humans mimic creature magic. He draws four separate streams directly through his open palm, harmonizing their constant motion with his breathing and internal chi. If that circulation stabilizes, his body might form its own magic crystal, turning elemental strength into something usable like a qigong technique. Louis concentrates until a snowflake pattern appears within his eye, and enormous ice crystals erupt around his seated body. Their growth expands into a freezing dome that strains the temple barrier, ultimately making Aronian's confident expression sharpen with surprise. The frozen shell bursts outward in a blinding wave of energy, lifting Louis high above the chamber within spiraling blue currents. Aronian watches the unthinkable experiment with a faint, impressed smile, all while Louis floats peacefully at the center of his newfound power. Unfortunately, the spreading ice sends surrounding students scrambling for help, and multiple lose their footing as crystals chase them across the floor. Frozen growth races along the temple walls and launches debris everywhere, forcing Aronian to suppress the strength before the whole building freezes. He lifts a sacred focus and calls upon Gaia's protection, summoning a blazing column powerful enough to answer Louis's cold. Aronian shapes that flame into a protective barrier around the chamber, enclosing the runaway ice within a roaring ring of heat. Pupils tumble between the clashing temperatures as frozen shards scatter, all while Aronian's fire ultimately shoves Louis's blue current into balance. Louis calms the newfound power and keeps both forces apart, sending one last golden pillar blazing above the temple roof. Its presence startles school instructors and the guilty priest alike, drawing every sensitive magician's attention toward the awakening hall. Louis draws near Aronian once the competing energies ultimately settle, only for the headmaster to question this unusual ice-like element. Holding the cold blue flame, Louis offers his working theory, explaining that rapidly moving elements seem capable of merging together. Distinct combinations should cause reactions and produce entirely new properties, but wind and water now entirely fill his meridians. Unsure how to handle that condition, Louis acknowledges he needs guidance, then notices the headmaster already watching him from across the hall. Aronian answers by raising one hand toward the bruised ritual chamber, and a sweeping ring of fire melts the remaining ice instantly. He catches the glowing school emblem within his open palm, before sternly asking whether Louis grasps what he just caused. The thaw shows unconscious pupils sprawled throughout the flooded hall, leaving Louis to thank Aronian sheepishly for preventing something worse. Aronian restores Louis's disguise and leaves the cleanup to him, although he invites the curious student to follow him after that. They cross the ruined temple below Gaia's silent stone gaze, unaware another observer watches them disappear through the distant doors. Within his office, Aronian commends Louis on awakening all 4 affinities, and Louis coolly confirms the unprecedented result over a drink. He demonstrates by balancing 4 colored elements above his hand, earning genuine praise for a beginner controlling them so smoothly. Aronian offers his personal magic notes as Louis's first reference, all while recommending Faye and Miliana for fire and water guidance. Before Louis can leave, the headmaster calls forth Kylie within, and his silver-haired aide steps into surrounded by controlled wind. Aronian introduces Kylie as the assistant he trusts most, assigning her to protect Louis from future assaults and sabotage. Kylie instantly suggests relocating for a safer demonstration, leading them into Aronian's earth-reinforced private preparation chamber. Once within, she asks Louis to reproduce his unknown element, so he draws together wind and water above his bandaged palm. Accelerating both streams makes their energies blend around a bright core, forming the freezing strength Louis chooses to call the ice element. Aronian has never heard of anyone combining affinities this way, all while Kylie savors the unnatural chill with growing excitement. Her delighted smile cautions Louis that observation won't satisfy her, and she abruptly surges ahead to experience the element firsthand. Louis catches her rushing strike within spiraling bands of cold, then drives an ice-coated fist toward her exposed side. His assault keeps accelerating as compressed blue strength collects behind it, forcing Kylie to twist away from the freezing collision. She falls back across the chamber all while Louis extends the icy stream, only to realize frost has slowed her arm and movements. Switching to fire, Kylie wants to know whether fusion has ever succeeded before, but Aronian says generations of magical research produced no example. Countless celebrated geniuses devoted whole lives to that unthinkable problem, since most humans can withstand only one elemental affinity. Even awakening multiple attributes remains extraordinarily rare among formidable magicians, and the legendary Eastern Saint Lady Mirian controlled only 3. She once attempted a fusion herself and suffered disastrous failure, since neither her body nor mind endured the colliding strength. Louis concludes commonplace humans simply can't survive elemental fusion, and Aronian clarifies the process calls for overwhelming physical and mental might. Guiding multiple elements through one body makes their forces collide internally, turning a failed attempt into an extremely quick death sentence. That realization makes Kylie's playful curiosity abruptly become serious. Since Louis may possess potential comparable to an actual saint, she reignites her fire and prepares to test that potential again, charging with both fists wrapped in far greater heat. Louis meets her renewed assault with another freezing counter, all while Aronian clarifies Lady Mirian's theory behind multiple attributes. A magician needs either a dragon-like body capable of surviving collisions, or magic crystals that channel each strength separately like creatures. Louis stops Kylie's hits and wants to know how those experiments ended, learning every Imperial attempt failed until fusion research became forbidden. Aronian never imagined anyone would casually break that ancient taboo, but Louis succeeds by circulating each element through separate meridians. Kylie cuts off his satisfaction with a sharp wind-powered kick, which Louis scarcely guards, all while assuring her he grasps the peril. If outsiders discover his secret, challengers could target or exploit him, so Kylie cautions that even careless experimentation may invite disaster. Protecting Louis is her assignment, but avoiding trouble remains his responsibility, and he agrees to present ice as advanced water magic. Aronian questions whether that explanation can survive serious scrutiny, so Louis confidently asks Kylie for one last assault. She obliges with another blazing charge aimed straight at him, all while Louis draws a rushing wall of water around himself. He compresses and accelerates the liquid into a brilliant core, then rides its expanding current safely above Kylie's fiery punch. The abrupt transformation leaves even his experienced adversary speechless, all while Aronian identifies something fundamentally distinct from normal magic. Louis calls the technique water element, supersonic ice form, but the astonished headmaster insists this process is not magic. Kylie can't explain ice that resists her flames all while radiating energy, so Louis credits force and scientific knowledge from his former world. Aronian enthusiastically offers instruction, resources, and credit for future discoveries, although Kylie privately questions protecting someone built on unexplained coincidences. Aronian will not dismiss possibilities merely since books miss them, and Kylie accepts his judgment despite viewing Louis as troublesome. Her fire surges again as she wordlessly commits to guarding him properly, ending the intense preparation session with one last blast. Aronian sends Louis back before classes and provides a mental recovery elixir, surprising him with proof that magical medicine can restore the mind. One dose leaves Louis so energized that sleep seems entirely unnecessary, until he opens his dormitory door and senses someone waiting within. Kara sits fully dressed beside the desk despite the late hour, making Louis wonder whether his quiet roommate stayed up for him. He thanks Kara for exposing the concealed artifact during awakening, then receives a black card instead of any explanation. Its merchant company crest shows why Kara recognized such specialized equipment, although Louis cautions that helping him could attract perilous foes. Kara offers only a curt thanks and leaves the conversation there, all while Louis stores the favor for future business opportunities. Their first morning class collects new pupils within the school preparation hall, where the flamboyant Derek introduces himself as their physical instructor. He promises martial arcane fundamentals and flawlessly conditioned bodies, instantly convincing most pupils that their new teacher is terrifyingly unusual. Louis overlooks the theatrics since Derek's emphasis on body and mind is correct, and that calm assessment catches the instructor's eager attention. Derek flashes across the formation before anyone can follow his movement, appearing beside Louis and declaring his condition perfect. He enthusiastically inspects the newcomer's thoroughly trained physique at close range, leaving Louis deeply regretting every sensible thought he just had. Derek then contrasts Louis with supposedly useless sons from great families, dismissing the insult as nothing when one noble student protests. Following school tradition, he calls forth upperclassmen to demonstrate the equipment first, all while Louis and Kane hear the upperclassmen disparage this year's newcomers. The older group presses forward together, mocking freshmen who even lost to commoners, and enthusiastically vows to display the gulf between apprentices and fighters. Kane identifies the humiliation ritual as another cherished school tradition, before Derek cuts off the chatter and commands an immediate demonstration. One confident upperclassman volunteers to handle the first machine, introducing a weighted pec deck designed for arms and chest. Earth magic reinforces every plate far beyond its commonplace mass, but the upperclassman smoothly presses a full ton without hesitation. His casual might shocks everyone who expected a normal preparation device, all while another upperclassman spins within a rotating frame without losing balance. A third runs comfortably with 250 kilograms on each leg, and Derek cheerfully sends the rattled freshmen to copy them. Their first volunteer strains against handles that refuse to move, all while others collapse around equipment built for far stronger bodies. One enchanted treadmill launches its exhausted runner across the hall, giving the upperclassmen plenty of material to ridicule their weak juniors. Their laughter dies when Louis steadily draws near the identical machines and presses 10 tons with a rhythm of a warm-up. He accelerates the treadmill until smoke pours from its overloaded frame, then spins the balance wheel fast enough to create a miniature tornado. Freshmen and upperclassmen stare together in entirely defeated silence, unable to find even the magical trace of enhancement medicine. Neil will not let Louis monopolize everyone's astonishment, forcing the pec deck past 15 tons through raw might. He follows by running with 2-ton stops balanced overhead, making the watching upperclassmen question every advantage they supposedly possessed. Neil smashes one block down and proclaims himself the winner, challenging Louis to settle their rivalry all while ignoring everyone else. Louis reminds him this lesson is basic conditioning, not a contest, and says displaying might for applause accomplishes nothing whatsoever. An embarrassed upperclassman instantly treats that observation as a personal insult, then calls for both formidable commoners reveal their awakened attributes. Neil proudly releases fire and earth as his dual affinities, staggering aristocrats who never expected that gift from a commoner. Louis follows their cover story and displays only water, which makes the arrogant upperclassman burst into relieved laughter. He calls water useless and wants to know whether Louis intends to slap people, prompting Louis to coolly question what makes the affinity amusing. In the surrounding area, pupils explain that water offers only Aqua Blade offensively, with most of its techniques limited to defense and support. Louis quietly processes why everyone looks down on the element, as the upperclassmen claim no water magician ever became a Grand Master. They advise him to hide behind teammates, worrying Miliana beside him, but Louis questions whether master rank genuinely represents water's absolute limit. The arrogant upperclassman calls that common knowledge and taunts commoner ignorance, until Kane and Faye angrily fire back at his sneering group. Both sides trade increasingly childish insults across the practice floor, before Sheath's older brother draws near Derek with a calculated proposal. He argues that proper magic requires bodies hardened through taking assaults, then suggests combining sparring with today's endurance lesson. The upperclassman volunteers to demonstrate Water's supposed weakness on Louis personally, all while Kane cautions that Sheath's brother plainly intends serious harm. Louis tells Derek no attribute is inherently superior or inferior, accepting the challenge to demonstrate that belief against the upperclassmen. Their leader moves ahead as his companions confidently celebrate at his back, and Louis reassures the concerned Kane before entering the match. Derek permits magic only within the marked central area, all while forbidding either side from avoiding incoming assaults entirely. Neil welcomes those savage rules with a blaze of laughter, thrilled that the freshmen can ultimately battle their upperclassmen directly. He ignites both arms and freely challenges every supposed weakling present, making Sheath's older brother plan to punish him after Louis. The upperclassman collects earth into a dense protective shell, flooding the center with golden light as the formation completes. Louis watches without concern all while the armored combatant presses forward, fully encased within an enormous technique called earth armor. The protected upperclassman rushes directly at his water-using target, but Neil intercepts him with one flawlessly timed flaming punch. That collision drives the armored combatant brutally into the floor, stunning every upperclassman who trusted the defensive technique entirely. Neil dismisses his fallen adversary as just another weakling, having shattered supposedly supreme earth armor in a single blow. Sheath's brother instructs the remaining upperclassmen to overwhelm Neil together, and multiple attackers converge from the ground and air. Neil tears off his restrictive jacket and welcomes the combined assault, absorbing a rapid barrage across his newly exposed guard. But every strike seems harmless, and Neil smiles broadly through the punishment, before snapping one attacker away with a savage counterkick. He seizes another upperclassman and swings him through the formation, scattering the whole group across Derek's practice floor. One bruised combatant spots an opening behind Neil's relaxed stance and drives an earth-reinforced fist directly into his back. Believing their surprise assault worked, the upperclassman permits himself one smile, only for Neil's hardened body to shatter his armored knuckles. The recoil leaves the attacker frozen in sudden disbelief, then pain catches up and drops him screaming to the floor. Neil scarcely notices, comparing the whole assault to a mosquito bite, all while another upperclassman questions how he shields every body part simultaneously. Neil answers by engulfing himself in fire and surging forward, smashing the terrified combatant straight through the reinforced wall. Derek employs the crater as a cheerful warning to everyone watching, making the remaining upperclassmen reconsider whether this humiliation lesson was wise. Even Louis finds Neil's enthusiasm excessive, although Kane is hardly taken aback, since another wind user already dives toward the waiting freshman. Kane intercepts him as Faye challenges a fire-wielding upperclassman herself, and wind and flame techniques erupt together across the battleground. With the other clashes underway, Louis turns toward his own adversary, and Sheath's older brother declares their match as the last lesson. He vows to teach the commoner proper respect for noble authority, then opens with an ambush so rude even Louis comments on it. The upperclassman vaults high above Louis before he can supposedly respond, gathering compressed wind between his hands for gale penetrate. A towering green blade smashes down across Louis's position, but the attacker instantly senses his technique striking something unnatural. The wind fractures against a translucent barrier of solid ice, leaving Louis entirely unharmed below his frozen defense. That unthinkable block wipes the confidence from his opponent's face, and the upperclassman hurriedly flips backward before Louis can counter. Frost coating his hand confirms the barrier genuinely came from water, all while Louis casually describes it as an advanced application of that element. When another combatant lunges in, he sweeps the assault aside with water, making Miliana recognize just how far his control already surpasses hers. The upperclassmen stare at the ice shield and fear this troublesome first-year student class, all while Sheath's brother quietly decides their current approach can't continue. In the surrounding area, Neil launches another attacker away with a savage flying knee, and the plotting upperclassman watches every first-year student battle with a calculating smile. Neil at the same time hurls another adversary aside without slowing down, then loudly invites the following upperclassman to try his luck. A faster upperclassman circles behind a fiery trail and taunts him to connect, which makes Neil's delighted expression turn dangerously focused. His answer detonates across the floor in a chain of explosions, forcing multiple upperclassmen to scatter all while a wind user dives overhead. That combatant releases a coiling green blast meant to restrain Neil, as another adversary complains that the commoner will not battle fairly. Neil responds by crashing down within a pillar of fire, all while the wind force sends one upperclassman tumbling past Louis. Louis stops a second surprise assault and taunts their hollow noble pride, but Sheath's brother maintains that winning justifies every tactical decision. Their coordinated assault traps Louis between wind and incoming fire until Neil barrels through the exchange with another blazing strike. Louis touches down behind his ice guard, admitting two adversaries complicate matters. Accurately, when the wind user sees his chance to assault again, He wraps Louis within a tightening spiral of green force, but Neil blasts the interfering upperclassman from behind before it closes. Sheath's brother curses the reckless commoner for ruining their teamwork, all while Neil sends the nuisance flying and turns back toward Louis. With every upperclassman removed, he instantly insists on their postponed duel, rushing into Louis's space so skillfully that Derek recalls William. Louis reads the compact punching pattern after only a few exchanges, catches Neil's extended wrist, and assaults the vulnerable joint. The lock should ultimately restrain his battle-crazed classmate, until Faye abruptly cautions Louis that something is terribly wrong. Neil ignores the twisted arm and clamps onto Louis instead, delighted that he has ultimately caught the elusive martial artist. His free fist erupts in flame and smashes Louis downward, making Neil laugh that their real fun has only begun. Louis rises bleeding and cautions that this assault crossed school rules, then freezes the hand still gripping him with flowing blue strength. Neil only bursts into laughter harder, insisting commonplace ice can't satisfy him, and vows to endure everything without running or defending. Louis obliges by raising jagged ice around Neil's whole body, coolly asking whether his reckless adversary would prefer something harsher. A second surge locks Neil's arms within thick crystal formations, but the burning pain somehow leaves him even more ecstatic. Fire explodes outward and pulverizes every frozen restraint, allowing Neil to seize Louis again and launch another assault. In Neil's mind, battling Louis promises an even higher level of might, since suffering has driven him since a desperate night in the wilderness. Exhausted beside a river, he once faced a pack of red-eyed wolves, and scarcely noticed the first creature until water splashed beside him. The whole pack lunged together through the darkness, tearing into Neil all while he fought frantically from the ground. He caught one wolf at his arm and refused to release it, then started laughing as survival awakened something ferocious within him. Fear disappeared behind a predatory stare matching the surrounding creatures, as Neil decided that pain simply proved he remained alive. Every fresh wound made that conviction feel increasingly exhilarating, teaching him to equate greater suffering with greater might. Only formidable creatures could survive in the world he understood, so he turned the wolves' own savage struggle against them. Rising amid the defeated pack, Neil embraced that twisted lesson entirely, and has chased stronger pain through every battle ever since. The story comes back to the battleground. Louis stamps and releases an upward current, launching Neil overhead as anxious classmates shout Louis's name. Neil descends within roaring fire, calling them equally strength-hungry creatures, all while Louis prepares a revolving field of countless open hands. Those layered palms catch Neil's flaming fist and divert its force, sending the missed strike crashing harmlessly into the practice floor. Neil recoils for scarcely a moment before charging through the pain, but Louis pivots overhead and drives a heel into his face. The collision only stretches Neil's delighted grin even wider, as Louis strings kicks, hurls, and palm hits into one seamless combination. Kane and Faye worry Neil may either rampage or get himself killed, but the bruised combatant surges back before they can intervene. Louis searches for a restraint that won't violate school rules, then sweeps freezing strength upward, and commands Neil to calm down. Ice Tempest carries him into a towering frozen formation, pinning Neil against its jagged surface, all while he bursts into laughter through the pain. He ignites every injury and starts melting his prison from within, forcing exhausted muscles to move below an even hotter aura. Derek watches the reckless recovery with growing professional interest, as Neil tears free and insists the ice still was not enough. His glowing eyes demand that Louis continue their escalating battle, when Kylie abruptly drops between them, with a crushing fiery kick. Louis identifies Aronian's aid at the very moment the battleground falls silent, and Kylie pins Neil down, declaring that he has gone too far. She dismisses the groaning combatant as a muscle-brained idiot, all while Derek draws near with embarrassingly enthusiastic admiration for his colleague. His clumsy flirting earns an immediate warning to keep his distance, so Derek protests that he only wanted battle to reveal Louis's potential. Kylie wishes he is not entirely foolish, and reminds him she shields Louis, then delivers Aronian's order to visit the headmaster after class. Derek accepts the inevitable lecture and disperses his remaining fire, although this extraordinary first-year student class keeps occupying his thoughts. Kane and Faye return to Louis, equally curious about everyone's future might, as Derek commands Neil dressed and threatens to deduct school credits. Neil submits, realizing he can't endure a master and needs creature-hunting money, before the bell ends class amid a thoroughly demolished preparation hall. All while upperclassmen limp away, Kane wants to know how often freshmen ever defeated them, and Louis notes that his school materials mention no such record. Kane shows it happened only 3 times, producing multiple future Grand Masters, with the latest victory belonging to the generation of their fathers. Elsewhere, a injured upperclassman apologizes to Jess and suggests secret retaliation, but Jess praises their effort and says revenge offers plenty of opportunities. Even a genius remains an imperial citizen below noble authority, so he confidently believes believes Lewis's fate still belongs in their hands. Back among the freshmen, Faye asks Miliana about Lewis's water techniques, but Miliana concedes such unprecedented control can't simply be copied. She needs offensive applications of her own and sees no easy answer, although Faye reminds her that plenty of time remains to improve. Miliana still feels desperate to succeed for her struggling family, prompting Faye to call Louis over with a possible solution. Their conspicuous approach begins rumors that Miliana plans a confession, when Faye merely asks Louis to teach his advanced water techniques. He agrees without hesitation since he considers them friends, and that simple word leaves Miliana unexpectedly uncertain. She cautions that helping her could eventually bring Louis serious trouble, but he would rather face trouble than betray someone he calls a friend. Miliana insists she can't involve him in her private burden, then flees before emotion can expose anything further. Faye apologizes to Louis and runs after her shaken companion, all while Louis suspects both of them carry circumstances much like his own. Seeking answers, he asks Kane what happened to Miliana's family, learning she is the Royce heiress and a Grand Master's granddaughter. The family declined after that grandmother died, although Faye may know more, so Louis turns to Kara and asks for another perspective. Kara quietly shows the Royce family clashed with the Arcanist Association, confirming Miliana's feared trouble is connected to that formidable organization. With no further details available, Louis chooses to ask Faye later, before their first magic lesson starts on the school preparation field. Their instructor introduces himself as Sid and promises martial arcane fundamentals, instantly confirming Louis's suspicion that the corrupt priest dislikes him. Sid catches Louis whispering with Kane and bars disturbing his lesson, deducting 1 school credit from both pupils without hesitation. He cautions that repeated violations can eventually reduce their credits to 0, then charges Louis another point for supposedly rebellious manners. With that petty punishment delivered, Sid collects earth magic overhead, shaping it into a colossal armored knight with spear and shield. The sheer scale makes Louis and Kane reconsider the priest's actual ability, as Sid clarifies martial arcane combines magic with physical technique. Apprentices must manifest armaments before coating themselves in arcane armor, and mastering both stages permits them to reach fighter rank. Sid channels strength through mind, body, and every deliberate movement, sending a blazing/tearing across the towering stone knight. The spectacle leaves most freshmen staring upward in open disbelief, before Sid offers 5 credits to whoever damages the statue most. He then divides everyone by attribute to practice their matching assaults, leaving Neil alone all while water users rehearse support magic nearby. That arrangement gives 2 pupils another excuse to mock them, claiming human punching bags will never even reach the statue. Their laughter reminds Miliana of someone she frantically seeks to prove wrong, and Louis notices the tension tightening across her expression. She denies anything is wrong and tries pushing him away, so he questions why attacking matters when protection rescues companions too. Miliana needs both, since only a Grand Master can restore her family, all while Louis doubts any divine attribute could genuinely be incomplete. But she has enhanced blades and chained hits without gaining enough strength, before another student calls her over to provide an aqua shield. Miliana surrounds herself with a broad curtain of circulating water, which catches the incoming wind user and deflects him harmlessly overhead. Everyone sees a natural defender, but Miliana still sees failure, awakening Lewis's memories of ridicule for studying martial arts all while bedridden. Those identical tormentors stole his research and declared him undeserving, ordering him to abandon an unthinkable dream and simply disappear. Miliana understands her weakness too, but keeps chasing her goal, so Louis concludes she may deserve the new route he showed Kane. He steps beside her shield and reshapes its current with practiced hands, raising sudden ice that catches the falling attacker before collision. Since Louis also believes in water's potential, he invites Miliana to watch, then boldly asks Sid for his own attempt against the statue. Sid permits it all while threatening confiscation of every credit for failure, but Louis already has a method for multiplying water's offensive force. The identical mockers laugh harder, believing only his ice could matter, all while Miliana cautions commonplace water can't scratch this reinforced construct. Louis accepts the risk, reassures her, and walks forward with an idea, passing other elemental attackers until he stands before the untouched knight. He collects loose grit from its base, remembering that softness overcomes hardness, then smashes those grains finely enough to suspend them in water. Immense pressure drives that abrasive stream between his extended fingers, transforming harmless water into a cutting armament from his old world. The condensed current coils around Louis like a luminous blue blade, before he swings his newly created martial arcane aqua cutter. Pupils initially mock its weak appearance, until someone urges closer attention, since a flawlessly clean line has appeared across the armored statue. Sid starts trembling as the unthinkable result registers in his mind, and the severed stone erupts apart along Lewis's brilliant blue cut. Miliana ultimately witnesses the offensive strength concealed within her own attribute, and carries that revelation away as evening settles over the school. Kane joins Louis once it is over, delighted by Sid's face and those 5 credits, explaining the priest fled class looking paler than spoiled bread. Louis missed that comedy all while thinking only about water magic. Then Kane suggests hearing Faye's plan for helping Miliana improve. Faye seeks her friend using recovery elixirs and renting specialized preparation rooms, although their combined prices make Louis instantly understand the problem. He as a result asks Kara for one favor involving the coming preparation mission, and multiple days later, the first-year student class draws together beyond for deployment. Derek praises their growth before announcing real creature hunting assignments, explaining the school borders the Great Mondo Forest on the western frontier. Creatures still inhabit it, growing more perilous toward the center, all while weaker creatures roam the outer region chosen for beginners. These missions both protect the Empire and develop practical battle experience, with recovered magic crystals buying credits and top performance earning bonuses. Reckless pupils requiring rescue instead lose 1 credit to their teacher, which only makes Neil celebrate permission to battle without restraint. Faye confirms Louis will train Miliana through genuine battle during the mission, so he shapes a 5-person team whose might should replace expensive facilities. Miliana agrees to join Faye, Kane, Kara, and Louis, sealing their new team with one collective clap. Derek then assigns each first-year student group to follow experienced upperclassmen, placing Louis below a familiar upperclassman who cautions that missions kill. Louis answers that peril is accurately what makes people grow, and his confident smile earns an irritated accusation of insolence. The upperclassman secretly instructs his companions never to help Lewis's group, all while Kane suspects they may lure the freshmen towards stronger prey. Lewis considers that perfect, since stronger creatures carry better crystals, and both groups advance together below the forest canopy. Their guides claim Saints once cleared this region and downplay every remaining danger, then suggest 5 talented apprentices could defeat 1 fighter-class creature. An enormous claw instantly rips through the brush beside them, wiping the smug confidence from their upperclassman guide's face. A red-eyed grand bear appears as the promised fighter-class adversary, although the upperclassman still pretends this is an easy preparation target. Privately, he understands its defense and stamina could exhaust the freshmen, all while Louis draws everyone together and prepares their coordinated response. The grand bear roars hard enough to shake the clearing, but Faye charges first with her sacred lance blazing around her. Her thrust detonates against the grand bear and launches Faye upward, opening space for Kane to spiral past its reaching claws. He drives a wind-coated slash directly across its enormous torso, but neither assault penetrates the monster's absurdly durable hide. The bear answers with one sweeping paw that sends Kane flying, only for Kara's flaming arrow to burst against its shoulder. Louis praises the clean shot as Kara steadily prepares another, all while their enraged target rises higher and charges the group. Miliana ultimately moves ahead, drawing water around her staff, and loops those currents over the grand bear's moving limbs. Her technique tightens into a liquid harness around its whole body, letting Miliana combine martial arcane with practiced throwing mechanics. Water flow shoulder throw deflects the creature through her pivot, spinning its enormous weight repeatedly through the air. Faye proudly makes it clear this water and jujutsu combination is Miliana's original creation, and Louis finds her inventive answer far more interesting than imitation. He accelerates toward the airborne grand bear before it can recover, matching its wild trajectory as the creature roars overhead. Louis springs after it, unwilling to let Miliana's opening disappear, then drives a concentrated blue strike into its descending body. The blow sends the bear higher all while 2 water streams cross below it, as Louis channels opposing energies through the rings across his fingers. He compresses the heated water into a pulsing sphere of vapor, then launches that unstable mass straight at the falling creature. A swirling shell engulfs the grand bear and crumples around it, blasting steam through its defenses until internal damage ultimately draws blood. The blast drives its enormous body into a fresh crater, leaving Miliana stunned that water harmed what other attributes scarcely scratched. Louis makes it clear pressurized steam burns flesh, disrupts breathing, and bypasses tough skin, which instantly makes Miliana wonder whether she can reproduce it. Rather of another lecture, Louis tosses multiple minuscule rings into her hands, and Miliana gazes at the unknown tools in confusion. He commissioned them through Kara after noticing Sid channel multiple attributes, preparing one set specifically so Miliana could use the identical method. Her first activation produces a horrifying column of concentrated flame, forcing Miliana to recoil as the whole clearing erupts at her back. She shields herself from the scorching wave sweeping past, all while its blazing trail tears straight through the distant forest. Miliana can only stare at the rings responsible for such strength, and the smoldering grand bear makes their potential unthinkable to deny. Even the watching upperclassman shakes since that fighter-class body almost vanished, but Louis abruptly senses multiple heavier presences drawing closer. Their guide identifies the approaching danger and instantly loses his voice, as a whole troop of flaming blaze kongs rushes into view. The leading creature pounds its chest and bellows across the scorched clearing, all while Kane questions why such creatures make their situation so perilous. Their upperclassman makes it clear Blaze Kong should never appear near school territory, much less gather here in a coordinated group of this size. That means other student teams may already face the identical peril, so the terrified upperclassmen retreat and demand immediate teacher support. Derek arrives carrying injured pupils and insists on an explanation himself, all while Neil happily confronts one towering Blaze Kong without hesitation. The unexpected creature only makes his battle-crazed grin return, as fleeing pupils race below a bright signal streaking overhead. Louis recognizes creatures this misplaced could indicate something far worse, before a blaze Kong looms over one abandoned upperclassman. The desperate student calls forth soil armor around his whole body, but one downward blow smashes his golden defense into the ground. He lies trembling within the crater formed by that effortless strike, all while the creature reaches down to finish its helpless target. The injured upperclassman can do nothing except scream below its shadow, until Louis smashes in behind a bursting wall of water. His rising strike rips the blaze Kong away from its victim, giving Kara and Miliana time to carry the upperclassman towards safety. The remaining three promise to follow after covering their retreat, at the very moment the creature compresses a blazing sphere within its mouth. Louis identifies the assault and urgently instructs everyone aside, before a concentrated fire beam rips through their formation. Miliana and Kara escape with the injured upperclassmen as flames chase them, leaving Kane and Faye to coordinate against the fully enraged creature. Kane employs Accelerate to launch himself through the ongoing fire stream, drawing both wind-coated blades as he closes the distance. The Blaze Kong stops his first slash with one hardened forearm, but Kane deflects Windstab across its exposed side. Faye follows instantly, refusing to let the creature regain balance, and sweeps her burning armament through a descending arc. The collision drives the Blaze Kong headfirst into the shattered earth, making Kane wonder whether subtlety ever entered Faye's muscular brain. She answers by gathering another fiery spiral around Ikrid Lance, then hammers down with Cremont Fall to deepen the crater. Within the fractured creature, Faye ultimately locates its glowing magic crystal and concentrates every remaining flame into her sacred lance. One piercing descent drives the armament through that exposed core, releasing a circular shockwave that tears across the clearing. The Blaze Kong's inner crystal fractures into burning fragments, allowing Faye one relieved breath over their first defeated foe. Kane cautions her not to relax, all while multiple creatures remain, accurately as another Blaze Kong releases a descending fire blast. Louis intercepts it with an expanding shield of solid ice, then freezes the attacker's arm and surges upward along its body. Jagged crystal grows around the Blaze Kong in rapid layers, sealing the apparently defeated creature within a towering frozen prison. Faye thanks Louis, having assumed the creature was already finished, when fire abruptly draws together within its open mouth again. Louis tackles Faye clear as another blast erupts from the ice, and the supposedly dying creature breaks apart every frozen restraint, even its earlier wounds visibly close below the lingering flames, confusing Kane since Blaze Kongs are ferocious, not regenerative. Louis identifies that unnatural recovery and feels an old dread return, since it resembles Neil's unthinkable healing during their battleground battle. Elsewhere, Neil bursts into laughter through another hit and insists on something stronger, before casually extracting a crystal from his defeated Blaze Kong. Derek faces multiple more regenerative creatures surrounding him at once, and understands their closing wounds will soon overwhelm surrounding students. Back with Louis, enormous figures converge around his exhausted trio, which makes him understand their situation has become deliberately lethal. More Blaze Kongs emerge until every escape route vanishes, all while Kara and Miliana lie unconscious beside the upperclassmen they rescued. That supposedly injured upperclassman quietly opens one flawlessly alert eye, satisfied that his preparations will let these altered creatures finish Louis. A green ring flashes below his hand as he issues that last command, and the whole Blaze Kong troop turns toward Louis together. One creature abruptly coats its body in flame like arcane armor, horrifying Kane since creatures should never wield a human battle technique. Its first armored step pulverizes the ground below Louis, who scarcely rolls clear before the descending foot catches him. Every remaining Blaze Kong ignores the others and targets Louis alone, all while their leader condenses a blazing sphere above one palm. The fireball swells into a miniature sun over the clearing, and even Louis freezes when he feels its concentrated strength. 5 more Blaze Kongs raise identical suns around his isolated position, making Kane and Faye shout Louis's name as they rush forward. Every fireball launches together and converges in one blinding eruption, all while the traitorous upperclassman watches the inferno from a safe distance. Convinced no apprentice could survive, he proclaims his operation successful, although Derek abruptly senses an unknown force beyond the flames. Neil feels it too and glances toward Louis's battlefield in confusion. At the very moment, multiple blue beams lance outward through the blast. Those freezing lines pierce the surrounding Blaze Kongs before they react, then spiral upward into a colossal vortex visible above the forest. Kane and Faye stop cold as that unthinkable strength clears their route, exposing Louis floating coolly within the revolving blue current. A frozen star gleams within his eye as his real circulation awakens, exposing control over an area normally possible only for a master. Louis has temporarily forced himself to that level by overdriving his mana, accepting the perilous strain since no safer option remains. He centers his breathing and releases breathing technique, Ice, shaping the whole vortex into a colossal crystalline dragon. Its serpentine form rips through one Blaze Kong after another, scattering the whole troop across an eruption of frozen spikes. Louis rides the fresh ice forward and whips into a rising kick, circling the following attacker before driving his palm toward its chest. The Blaze Kong notices the compressed current only one instant too late, as Louis unleashes it through a crushing close-range torso strike. He rebounds overhead all while another frozen blossom erupts below his target. then wraps his fist in rotating water for the following exchange. A flaming punch sweeps past as Louis slips underneath its arc, letting an ice spear catch the attacking creature from behind. Jagged crystal closes around that Blaze Kong before it can turn, all while two more converge on Louis with burning fists. He crosses rising ice blades between both incoming assaults, forcing the bewildered creatures apart along separate frozen channels. Louis accelerates between them so swiftly that blue after images remain, arranging all 8 foes within his glowing 8 trigrams formation. Ice bursts from every marked position and locks their bodies in place, giving Louis one silent breath before the finishing sequence starts. Chain Palm sends overlapping blue impacts through the whole formation, and towering crystal pillars erupt wherever each strike touches down. The technique ends with Louis dropping exhausted onto one knee, surrounded by every Blaze Kong sealed within enormous ice formations. The trapped creatures roar as Chain Palm reverberates through their prisons, breaking each formation into frozen stops suspended around Louis. Watching from hiding, the upperclassman senses that unusual force exactly as expected, all while Kane and Faye celebrate a whole troop defeated almost instantly. Louis notices wind and water abruptly responding more effortlessly than before, until Kane drapes over him and loudly praises the overwhelming ice technique. Faye ends their celebration, warning that another ambush could still happen, but Louis senses schoolteachers already approaching through the forest. The concealed conspirator recognizes rescue has arrived and abandons further assaults, crushing a glowing control device between both hands before escaping. He falls back, all while bitterly declaring Louis merely survived through luck, as a green cyclone descends upon the ruined battlefield. Aronian appears from it and instructs staff to rescue pupils and clear creatures, sending instructors across the ice to reach every fallen team. The headmaster draws near Louis' group and first confirms their safety, then learns Louis somehow defeated multiple master-level Blaze Kongs alone. Even Aronian pauses at that number before considering what it implies, although Louis insists the unnatural incident matters more than his victory. He presents one severed Blaze Kong head preserved within clear ice, and Aronian commands everyone back, all while the school investigates the rest. Back on campus, Louis spends his newly earned credits at an elixir shop, where the clerk cautions that excessive mental recovery medicine harms the body. Kylie catches him leaving with a whole bag and requests a private conversation, exposing Aronian found alchemy, drugs, and artificial modification in the corpses. Louis as a result confirms the whole forest incident was intentionally engineered, all while Kylie suspects foes exploiting an aging imperial leadership. With no successor chosen, formidable entrants seek control through their children, although Louis rejects a simple succession struggle as the complete explanation. Those altered creatures ignored everyone else and specifically hunted him, so Kylie vows to investigate independently and provide whatever help she can. Before leaving, she urges Louis to grow stronger and justify Aronian's faith, which leaves him to study one recovery elixir with renewed determination. He drinks it instantly and discards the empty vial at his back, telling his waiting friends that relentless preparation remains the obvious plan. Whatever conspiracy draws near, Louis can't afford to waste another moment. Elsewhere, the traitorous upperclassman reports their modified creatures underperformed badly, admitting most corpses self-destructed, all while multiple remained for school recovery. His seated father pays attention without displaying any concern, even when warned Aronian may uncover evidence within those bodies. The aristocrat dismisses it since the test subjects originated from the Bolton Empire. More importantly, Prince Vaughn examines Louis's portrait and questions his cursed identity, all while Brian maintains that horrifying aura confirmed every private suspicion. His father merely snaps once and wants to know why they should interfere, igniting the portrait within a coil of crimson flame. Prince Vaughn compares the cursed child to an insect below notice, despite Brian warning that Louis could destroy their concealed armament and plans. Vaughn instead instructs Louis's information delivered to the association's higher ranks, making Brian realize the Arcanist Association will become their following blade. As the portrait burns, Vaughn invokes the goddess's protectors and their sacred duty, planning to let another foe eliminate Louis with its own hands. At the same time, Louis starts another solitary session within the school battleground, circulating blue strength through his stance until water coils around him. Kane abruptly dives from above, but Louis senses the wind before collision, dropping below the green slash as his challenger keeps through. Their following exchange fills the battleground with blades, afterimages, and redirected momentum, until Louis cuts within Kane's rhythm with a sudden counter. He closes his eyes for one calm instant and reads the following assault, slipping below Kane's descending blades before either can connect. Louis turns that miss into a spinning throw that carries both combatants onward, and green steel collides with blue ice high above the floor. Their collision scatters flame downward and splinters Louis's frozen defense, triggering a ferocious blast that consumes both sides of the battleground. Another teammate assaults through the smoke with spiraling rings of force, but Louis slips beyond the collapsing debris before they can close. His pursuers instantly spring the concealed ice trap below his feet, launching him upward along a sudden forest of frozen spikes. Faye smashes through the crystal and drives their combination onward, ending the whole sequence within one enormous blast. The team celebrates, convinced their meticulously timed assault ultimately connected, even though Kara cautions that Louis probably discovered their plan already. As expected, his silhouette walks from the smoke and praises their attempt, noting Kane's improved speed and Faye's stronger bare-handed spear movements. He especially praises Miliana for concealing Kara's item with mud, admitting their remarkable growth almost let the whole strategy succeed. Kane still groans since Louis escaped without suffering any real damage, all while Faye questions his unusual method of sensing motion through energy. Louis makes it clear that it combines circulating spirit and magic together, promising lessons after more research as Miliana hands him a recovery elixir. Watching him drain but another vial, she voices one lingering suspicion, saying Louis sometimes seems like someone who came from another world. Louis almost chokes on the elixir and nervously wants to know what inspired that thought, so Miliana points out how freely he shares techniques families normally hoard. Kara watches his awkward reaction all while Louis swiftly prepares an innocent explanation, claiming commoners simply benefit when everyone learns and becomes stronger together. Faye accepts that answer and instructs everyone to rest before tomorrow's class, warning Louis not to continue perilous preparation without companions nearby. Kane cheerfully escorts him toward the exit as the others follow, but Louis soon falls behind and remains alone within the battleground. He opens another heavy bag filled with green recovery elixirs, only to discover that his rapidly shrinking supply needs replacement already. Louis lifts another vial and starts drinking despite the obvious excess, when a sudden hand clamps around his wrist and stops him. Kylie confiscates the elixir, knowing he consumed the identical medicine yesterday, and cautions that repeated doses will eventually reduce his brain to mush. Louis grasps the peril, but his urgent responsibilities leave little patience, since he promised Luciella to reach Grandmaster and reclaim their orphanage. He also recalls the concealed foe whose unusual strength keeps pursuing him, answering that danger with a silent vow to prove his own might. Even whole crowds of creatures can't matter if they continue targeting him, so the glowing elixir remains an irresistible shortcut toward his goal. Louis stresses that unfinished responsibilities demand every possible increase in might, assuring Kylie that controlled doses merely double his available preparation time. He drinks before she can stop him and waits for the familiar recovery, all while Kylie watches closely, plainly unconvinced by his confident excuse. Without warning, crimson energy erupts around Louis and floods the battleground, startling Kylie as the identical ominous aura twists through his body. Her defensive magic engages instantly and slams that force away from her, returning Louis to himself before his abruptly smooth circulation gets away control. Kylie conceals her alarm when he innocently wants to know whether anything unusual happened, but the realization at her back glasses becomes unthinkable to ignore. Empty containers scattered around the table reveal the true scale of his habit, and Kylie calls for to know whether Louis consumed every missing elixir. His embarrassed admission confirms exactly what she feared, since school records show his credits constantly funding mental recovery medicine. Louis still believes rapid advancement offers his only route to Grandmaster, but Kylie says damaged fundamentals and that disturbing aura threaten him already. She seizes his hand before he can argue and drags him away, deciding an R-rank magic elixir test must examine his condition instantly. They enter a quiet alchemy laboratory filled with equipment and ingredients, where one drop of Louis' blood falls into a green solution. Aronian finds no elixir damage, only cerebral activity stronger than before, although Kylie insists Louis's vacant behavior and crimson eruption were unquestionably abnormal. Her description makes that ferocious aura unthinkable to dismiss as commonplace recovery, but Aronian suggests increased magic might indicate a rare awakening instead. Louis privately questions whether this is another mark of the cursed child, all while Aronian notes even enlightenment can't ignore the goddess's magical rules. He will not reach conclusions about phenomena none of them fully understand, despite Kylie's certainty that something within Louis remains dangerously unusual. Aronian walks deeper into the laboratory and starts gathering more equipment, explaining that alchemy still can't predict how elixirs affect Louis's special constitution. Kylie tries questioning him, abruptly suspecting the headmaster understands something more, and wordlessly questions how many other secrets surround Louis. Louis instead identifies that local alchemy simply fuses ingredients without refinement, meaning incompatible components may create the enigmatic reaction within his body. By the following day, he has assembled every tool needed for an experiment, promising the skeptical Kylie that his unknown process will explain itself. A golden reaction erupts first and almost fills the laboratory with light, followed instantly by a blue surge that rattles every nearby container. 3 flawlessly separated elixirs remain once it is over, proving Louis's method successful, and even Aronian yells in disbelief at the unthinkable result. He recognizes Louis separated every ingredient contained within the original elixir, then enthusiastically offers personal instruction in elixir science to develop that talent. Louis accepts instantly, knowing a commoner rarely examines below the headmaster, all while Aronian happily promises double credits for every successful contribution. Kylie watches their instant partnership and questions whether Louis has any weakness, as he examines how natural plants supply the magic stored within elixirs. Since plants require both fertile earth and water, Louis combines those attributes, causing a green symbol of life to blaze from his hands. Aronian and Kylie recognize another entirely unknown magical phenomenon, which Louis conveniently describes as his latest moment of enlightenment. Green energy twists into living dragons and coils across the whole laboratory, leaving Aronian speechless before a strength absent from every known classification. Vines and trees erupt as two creative attributes become something entirely new, formed by nourishing fertile soil with water until fresh life sprouts. Louis gives this combined force the straightforward name wood element, all while Kylie repeats it cautiously and inspects the surrounding growth. He demonstrates with a delicate flowering tendril curling around his fingers, tempting Kylie to approach and touch the seemingly harmless creation. One minuscule pink shoot stretches innocently toward her waiting fingertip, then changes into a hungry mouth and snaps at her hand. Kylie recoils as the tendril whips past and circles for another strike, only for multiple more carnivorous blossoms to surround her from every angle. Her eyes flare red before a concentrated fireburst catches the attacking growth, reducing every snapping flower to black fragments within the flames. Kylie touches down beyond the blast, all while surviving vines retreat toward Louis, who coolly catches the drifting remnants as if nothing perilous happened. She can scarcely believe he created life instantly and weaponized it instantly, but Louis says battle is not the wood element's greatest might. A newly formed blossom settles harmlessly above his open palm, as Aronian understands wood may explain the healing strength within recovery elixirs. Louis agrees, since elemental energy separates commonplace plants from medicinal ingredients, connecting composite magic, elixir creation, and alchemy within one shared principle. Aronian offers unlimited materials if Louis keeps producing experimental elixirs, then turns serious and asks his new student one far greater question. Since might alone can't rule human destiny, does Louis want strength to change fate? That question soon brings them deep below the school into a concealed cavern, where Louis spreads green energy across the bare stone under Aronian's supervision. A luminous blue plant rises rapidly from roots formed by wood magic, amazing Aronian no matter how many times he watches the process, since such a valuable specimen should never mature this swiftly. Louis acknowledges the accelerated growth consumes more mana with every valuable plant, and Aronian reminds him that even miracles always demand a price. Still, blue vines continue spreading as Louis tests his current limit, all while Aronian judges that cost remarkably cheap compared with normal cultivation. Purified ingredients already remove side effects and enable entirely new wood elixirs, giving the school enough research achievements to justify every expense. Louis soon completes multiple specialized recovery, healing, and enhancement formulas, so Aronian proceeds to test their effects in battle. He argues that battling someone formidable remains the fastest road to improvement, then takes the opposite side of the cavern battleground as Louis's adversary. Louis accepts multiple fresh elixirs and asks the headmaster not to hold back, swallowing the first vial before their perilous experiment starts. Crimson energy wraps around him as he dives directly at Aronian, whose green defense meets the charge in a ferocious collision below Kylie. Watching the relentless exchange, she decides the headmaster genuinely fights like a creature. Night settles over the school before their punishing test ultimately concludes, and Louis comes back to his room exhausted after Aronian honors that request entirely. Without the new elixirs, he suspects recovery would have taken a whole month, until Kara abruptly appears at his back and catches him entirely unprepared. Louis whirls around and stammers Kara's name at the unexpected visit. Kara wordlessly examines an empty vial and the green residue spilled beside it, all while Louis claims Aronian supplied the elixir and entrusted him with profits. Kara's flat stare makes it obvious that explanation convinced absolutely nobody, and Kara walks straight at Louis before another excuse can appear. Louis falls back nervously when Kara stops within inches of him, only for Kara to state plainly that Louis created the elixir himself. His frantic denial crumples before it even becomes a complete sentence, especially when Kara points toward the evidence of his unnaturally fast recovery. Louis ultimately acknowledges the truth and wants to know how Kara recognized it, so Kara simply notes that the famously conservative headmaster gave him away. Impressed, Louis requests secrecy since public attention would create endless trouble, and Kara responds by coolly presenting a practical solution. Kara hands Louis a document whose purpose remains unclear at first, exposing an unusually favorable contract with a Kandrian trading company. As Louis reads its exceptional terms, Kara starts collecting the spilled elixir, then pours a small measured dose into a much larger container. The mixture dilutes evenly, all while preserving enough color and magical activity, and Kara clarifies the contract will protect and conceal the finished product. Louis recognizes the trading company can distribute his elixirs under its own name, keeping every customer from discovering who actually developed them. Kara adds guaranteed profit under Aronian's respectable name, all while the concealed developer remains protected from every curious buyer. Louis sees how many sales routes would make tracing the product almost unthinkable, but accepts the attractive offer only after adding two firm conditions. The elixirs must be weakened, and Candace must support the Rosiera orphanage, terms Kara accepts before snatching the contract from Luis's hands. A quick signature turns their improvised plan into an official agreement, which Kara lifts proudly under the Candace Trading Company name. Louis shows a smile at the completed contract and the opportunity it forms, then shakes Kara's hand, all while praising a merchant's son for practical instincts. He also murmurs additional business advice that could strengthen the company, leaning closer so their unusually sensitive arrangement remains entirely private. Whatever Luis proposes surprises Kara enough to break that usual composure before Luis leaves to prepare tomorrow's elixir shipment and recommends rest. Kara watches the closing doorway for a long, thoughtful moment, then follows into the corridor once Louis has disappeared from sight. One hand quietly loosens the ribbon holding Kara's short hairstyle together, releasing long purple hair that glimmers strangely below the hallway light. Beyond the school, two pale birds launch from an upper window and carry this quiet transition into the night beyond the dormitory. The birds burst through an upper opening within two clouds of concealing smoke, transforming into masked, taloned attendants before landing wordlessly in the corridor. One clawed foot tests the floor all while both intruders listen for movement, then a sharp orange eye checks around the nearest doorway. Finding the hallway empty, the pair presses forward toward Kara's room, scaling the walls with ease to avoid making any commonplace footsteps. One attendant discovers a hooded figure and reaches forward without warning, only to receive Kara's immediate flying counter for that careless approach. The collision ends the attempted greeting before it properly starts, leaving the bird-like servant crumpled on the floor and clutching a fresh bruise. Apparently, Kara strikes this attendant, often whenever secret visits become too familiar, but both servants still kneel and address their disguised classmate as their lady. Kara appears in her true long-haired appearance and insists on their report, coolly preparing herself, all while the nervous visitors wait for instructions. Both attendants bow as their concealed mistress ultimately draws near the table, where Kara sets the Candace contract directly into their hands. Its remarkably generous terms make one servant accuse her of losing reason, especially when neither grasps what makes Louis worthy of special treatment, but they calculate his plan could make Candace a leading Eastern company, and Kara firmly gives Louis, not herself, credit for the strategy. Her attendants can't understand how someone so inexperienced designed such a plan, but Kara answers that Louis possesses something far more important: potential. They still warn he could betray her and support another imperial heir, so Kara responds by giving both servants a personal assignment. She seeks them to secure control of the Rosiera orphanage, convinced Louis's kindness makes that promise worth honoring. Kara dismisses the pair once both agree to follow her order, and they return to bird form before flying through the window. With midterms approaching, she understands their whole plan must advance swiftly, all while privately challenging Louis Kirill to reveal his full potential. Soon the Academy's crucial midterm starts with technical and battle sections. Starting within a trap corridor, nobody has flawlessly cleared without martial arcane. Faye assaults aggressively but fails her challenge after earning 300 points, all while Kane's wind-assisted run ends with a slightly higher 320. Miliana stops at 250 and Kara reaches 300, before Neil's reckless charge earns 325 and another failure. Derek threatens even harsher preparation if their results disappoint him following semester, even though another instructor confirms the freshman's fundamentals are improving well. Derek cares less about those averages than one approaching student, since even Aronian has taken a special interest in Louis Kirill. Derek predicts Louis can exceed 600 despite technically remaining an apprentice, turning the instructor's curiosity into another wager before Louis steps into. In the surrounding area, aristocrats dismiss the commoner since their own privileged classmates already failed, all while Louis coolly examines the dark entrance and takes his first step. Flaming arrows instantly launch from concealed sigils within the corridor walls, followed by dozens of brilliant projectiles filling every visible route forward. The barrage becomes a solid tunnel of fire racing straight at Louis, who triggers void calculation method and studies the whole pattern. His perception traces every magical circulation and predicts each incoming trajectory, then calculated muscle activation drives his first flawlessly timed step. With the solution complete, Louis races between explosions without breaking stride, leaving the opening trap field erupting uselessly behind his speeding figure. A fresh danger abruptly emerges before his calculation can settle, as a purple tentacled creature unfolds within the following passage. Its sweeping strike clips Louis's route and hurls him toward the wall, but he plants both feet against the stone and rebounds safely. Landing low, Louis instantly senses another presence falling from above, and a turquoise mass smashes down exactly where he stood. The creature resolves into a jet slime already surging after him, swelling before releasing multiple pressurized streams across the corridor. Louis rolls between the jets as blue water slices past both sides, then rises beside one curving stream and follows its safer outer edge. More jet slimes gather ahead and prepare another synchronized volley, all while a descending spiked wall seals the easiest escape overhead. Concealed cannons open within the surrounding stone to complete the enclosure, and their glowing ammunition fires down through the narrowing space. Louis identifies a deliberate pincer assault linking every trap together, as the slimes answer with concentrated blue beams from below. Flaming cannon rounds descend simultaneously and erase every normal opening, forcing void calculation method to process the whole collision at once. Louis dives within a water current at the very moment both elemental barrages meet, although the enormous volume of shifting data strains even his concentration. He ignores the complexity and searches below appearances for each attack's essence, reducing countless projectiles into two opposing patterns and one shared answer. Their optimal vectors intersect, making fire and water destroy each other, all while Louis completes the calculation with a confident smile. He bursts through the resulting smoke before either trap can reset, then rides the remaining water force along the vertical wall. That converted momentum becomes the optimal solution for reaching the following chamber, where a glowing network of routes unfolds below his waiting feet. Red lasers and fresh slime beams activate along every branch of that network, but Louis touches down accurately on one glowing junction before they cross. Calculated afterimages weave through the colored lines and approaching slimes, directing a red blast into the first turquoise creature instead. Its retaliatory water beam smashes into another trap and widens Lewis's opening, allowing him to fly between two explosions on their combined force. Spectators lean forward as fire and water erupt throughout the test structure, all while one instructor questions whether Louis somehow learned its concealed strategy. His colleague recognizes Louis multiplies trap interactions instead of evading them separately, and Derek suspects the corridor still has not forced out everything. Louis reaches the following section with dying flames rolling behind each step, only to face another narrow route bordered by rotating wall spikes. A purple creature abruptly rockets toward him faster than any earlier projectile, but Louis catches its solid head before the charge reaches his chest. He hurls it away, but the elastic creature stretches through his grip, exposing speed extreme enough to surprise even Louis for a moment. The Echo Bat splits into a storm of purple copies overhead, famous as the continent's fastest creature and another unthinkable physical obstacle. Louis answers by driving force into the floor and launching himself upward, surrounding his body with calculated blue roots that pursue every echo. Louis adjusts 3 movements in sequence and deflects those pursuing lines until their blue trajectories spread at his back like an enormous fan. One chosen route intercepts the fastest purple echo at exactly the right moment, allowing Louis to seize the real bat and smash it downward. Even the observing instructors stare when his answer succeeds instantly, since Louis identifies and eliminates every echo in its proper order. His judgment separates false targets all while physical precision handles the survivors, leaving every echo bat defeated before the evaluators finish reacting. A brilliant completion signal up above the corridor entrance, and the scoreboard awards Louis an unprecedented 999 points. First place appears beside his name as Louis ultimately exhales, all while losing spectators accuse Derek of baiting another expensive wager. The instructors confirm Louis broke the school record with a perfect result, and his friends instantly surround him, demanding the secret behind it. Neil brushes past Louis without offering his usual challenge, then heads away alone all while the whole group watches in confusion. Kane questions whether Neil ultimately recognized the difference between their might, but Louis examines that retreating figure and quietly rejects the explanation. The crimson force around Neil suggests something far more complicated. Before Derek ends the technical test and starts drawing battle matchups, he permits everyone to battle at full might during the battle assessment, which sends multiple confident upperclassmen enthusiastically toward the drawing barrel. One regards this as a rare opportunity to personally educate the juniors, then reaches among the lots all while Louis waits at his back. A crimson ring quietly bends the papers toward his searching fingers, and Derek notices the suspicious maneuver but merely shows a smile as he passes. The scheming upperclassman withdraws exactly the matchup he wanted, already judging Louis Kirill troublesome enough to require careful handling. Neil separately intends to assault only after someone weakens Louis first, all while the intended target innocently draws his own lot beside Kane. Faye discovers Kane shares her block and vows he will never reach Louis, as Kara wordlessly examines whatever adversary her own paper shows. Miliana touches down in Lewis's block, meaning continued victories will eventually unite them, although her attention shifts when she identifies her first adversary nearby. That adversary belongs to the identical trio of upperclassmen now laughing together, but Louis promises Miliana that every future match will receive his full might. Neil watches their conversation and tightens his grip around his selected lot, all while the upperclassmen order one another to exhaust Louis before their leader hits. Derek ultimately divides every competitor according to the completed brackets, leaving Faye delighted and Kane irritated by their inevitable confrontation. Miliana's route opens against one smug member of that upperclassmen group, all while Neil's side points directly at Louis as the matches begin.